Poco.
Där kommer du.
Og rigtig hjertelig velkommen. Vi har de sidste med, det er perfekt. Kom nærmere og sid på trappen. Dejligt at se så mange, og velkommen til alle, som er med på livestream også. I dag er jo en dejlig solskinsdag i modsætning til i går, så det er ekstra dejligt at kunne byde velkommen herude, hvor der er dejlig luft og lys omkring os. Jeg hedder Pernille og har ansvaret for Motus, i hvert fald lige lidt endnu, men det kommer vi lige tilbage til. Det er altid dejligt at kunne byde velkommen herude, hvor vi deler hoppen herude med vores ejer, familien Sibrandsen, som går rigtig meget op i, at der bliver arbejdet med teknologier inden for IoT til pleje- og sundhedssektoren, men også med IT-sikkerhed, og i særdeleshed også med AI, og især omkring det 18. verdensmål. Så derfor er det mega fedt at være herude, hvor der altid summer af mega meget liv. I dag, hvor vi er mange på trappen, har vi sagt til rigtig mange af vores kollegaer, at det måske er en god idé, at de arbejder hjemme. Så det er ikke sikkert, at de helt mærker den der summen, som vi andre mærker til hverdag. Det, som vi jo rigtig meget skal tale om i dag, er IT-sikkerhed, og det er det, formiddagen kommer til at gå med. For rigtig mange virksomheder handler det her med IT-sikkerhed jo i virkeligheden om at være meget operationel. Og når vi taler om operationel IT-sikkerhed, så handler det jo rigtig meget om det, som vi kalder de røde prikker. Det vil sige, at man jo i virkeligheden som virksomhed kigger på sit risikobillede, og så får man identificeret en hel masse ting, hvor man skal gøre noget. Og så sker der tit det, man ingenting gør. Så får man i virkeligheden afdelingen for røde prikker. Og det er det, der gør alle urolige om natten. Man har identificeret nogle ting, men man har ikke rigtig mulighed for at gøre noget ved det. Og det er det, som vi kommer til at beskæftige os rigtig meget med her i løbet af formiddagen. Hvor mange af jer har nogle gange ligget urolige over sådan en sikkerhedsissue, I har tænkt, det var ikke godt det der. Og det var alligevel ikke mange. Det synes jeg er lidt flot. Vi oplever jo her i Motus, at faktisk hvert eneste kvartal er der en af vores kunder, der bliver ramt af ransomware. Det synes vi faktisk er en lille smule vildt. Det der jo ofte sker, er, at så kommer man i panik. Og hvad er det vigtigste for at undgå panik? Det er faktisk, at man har trænet det. Man skal træne det. Man skal blive bevidst om, hvad er det, der foregår, og hvad er det, der kan komme til at ske i de forskellige scenarier. Så skal man træne det. Og når man ikke har tid til at træne det, så skal man prøve at skabe nogle rammer omkring det setup, man har, som gør, at det ikke er nødvendigt at træne alt for meget. Så det er naturligt for enhver, hvad det er, man skal gøre, når en krise opstår. Og hånden på hjertet, det kommer til at ske for os alle sammen. På et eller andet tidspunkt. Godt. Jeg tror faktisk, at med de ord, så vil jeg lade ordet gå videre til Lars, som vil tage jer igennem resten af dagen og programmet.
Tak, P, for lige at slå fast, at I alle sammen bliver ramt af ransomware. Så fik vi lige det på plads. Mit navn er Lars Lastein. Jeg er salgsdirektør i Motus. Det er mit job at føre jer igennem agendaen i dag. Og I kan se den faktisk derovre. Og jeg har den også lige her, og jeg håber, det er den samme. Så vi kommer til at starte ud med en fyr, der hedder Paul. Paul, han taler på engelsk, og der bliver meget af det, vi kommer til at høre i dag, som bliver engelsk, og det betyder, at vi kommer til at skifte lidt mellem dansk og engelsk, eller også populært kaldt engelsk. Så vi kommer til at tale lidt om Assume Breach. Hvad er det? Hvordan arbejder man med det? Han kommer fra et selskab, der hedder Retest. Retest er præsenteret her i dag. Og de er gode til at finde ud af, hvor der er problemer, man skal forholde sig til. Og det han forklarer, det er, hvordan man arbejder med Assume Breach, og beviser det den vej igennem. Bagefter så har vi en af vores partnere, AvePoint, der kommer og fortæller os om nogle af de udfordringer, der kan være med at skabe sikkerhed i Office 365. Det bliver også rigtig interessant, det bliver på engelsk. Så kommer det, som måske er vores hovedstykke, det er nemlig, at vi har lavet et lille komplot sammen med advokatselskabet Horten, hvor vi faktisk har lavet et angreb på dem. Man kan jo ikke sige, at de kan lave et surprise-angreb på sig selv, men vi har i hvert fald prøvet at lave det, der minder om. Og det vi vil forklare jer, hvorfor gjorde vi det, hvad var formålet med det hele, hvad skete der. Og det bliver rigtig, rigtig interessant. Efterfølgende så vil Arctic Wolf komme og fortælle lidt omkring, hvordan man arbejder som det, der hedder en security concierge. Og Arctic Wolf er en af vores store sikkerhedspartnere, og det er for at give jer et billede af, hvad er egentlig en sikkerhedsservice. Så kommer Tim fra Motus, det er ham, der driver driften. For dem af jer, der er backup-kunder i huset, ved, at hvis man kommer ud i noget lidt langhåret, så kan det være, at man kommer lidt i kløerne på Tim. Og Tim, han fortæller, hvad vi har lært ud af vores 150 forskellige sikkerhedstjek, som vi har lavet på forskellige former for kunder og prospekter. Og til sidst, så kommer Jeppe Glæstrup fra et selskab, der hedder Strato. Han kommer og fortæller, hvad det egentlig er, der sker, når man tænder lyset i rummet med alt det der fine sikkerhed. Hvad sker der så? Og Jeppe, han er CEO for det selskab, der hedder Strato, og dem fusionerer vi med om ganske kort tid. Så det er faktisk min kommende chef, så jeg prøver at opføre mig pænt, sådan lige i hvert fald i de her dage. Ja, er der nogle spørgsmål til agendaen? Og så vil jeg lige en hilsen til alle jer derude, og det er jo det meste af Jylland og Fyn, der sidder derude. Velkommen til, tak fordi I kom ind. Det bliver livestream med det hele, og jeg tager faktisk ikke gas, det gør det. Og vi optager selvfølgelig også det her, vi har sat VHS'en til, og vi kommer til at lave nogle små klip, som vi kan bruge efterfølgende til. Der kommer også et kamera rundt og spørger jer om nogle ting, og hvis I har lyst til at medvirke, så gør I. Hvis I ikke har, så er det også helt okay. Så vi håber, at det bliver sådan en interessant og vedkommende begivenhed, og så kan I gå hjem, og så kan I livestreame den bagefter, når I nu vil have det hele igen. Ikke? Så lad os gøre det. So, with that, and if there's no further questions, oh, by the way, toiletter, derude, bare lige, så ved det. Hen under trappen derhen, så ved I det. Right, I would like to introduce the first speaker of today, and his name is Paul Arcelier. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Paul, he's from Retest, and he has a chilling message for you guys.
Well, nice introduction. Thank you so much.
Hey guys, so I'm not going to be moving around like these guys because I'd like to be able to change. Actually, maybe it's going to work if I do this. Oh, is there a pointer also? Like, I don't think so. Well, it's too bad. Well, I'm not going to be moving around like these guys, but I hope it's still going to be interesting. I'm Paul, as Lars said, and I work for Retest Security as a senior cybersecurity consultant. I do a bit of everything. I do web application testing, I do application testing, and I also do Zoom Reach. Today I'm going to be talking about the most common misconfigurations I see on an AD domain and how to fix them. The agenda is pretty simple for today. First we're going to talk about a little bit of introduction of AD in general, then the command attack vectors that we're seeing in the wild, or like we're actually doing at customers. Then some words of conclusion. If you have questions, the end would probably be the best time to ask them. So a little bit of introduction. Some words on Active Directory. As you probably all know, Active Directory is a solution to manage Windows infrastructure for organizations. So you manage a lot of things, computers, users, authentication, and so on and so forth. And you, of course, manage the security of your organization through Active Directory. Now, this talk is going to focus on on-prem environments. And when you're attacked on an on-prem environment, the things attackers will go for always is something called domain admin, which is basically the keys to the kingdom of the domain. If you get a domain administrator access as an attacker, you get everything from the domain. You get server access, you get credentials, you can impersonate any user, you can do anything you want if you get this DA, domain admin access. So as an attacker, the different phases go like this. First you do initial compromise. So initial compromise is, for example, phishing. If someone sends a phishing email to someone in your organization and then someone open it, then probably the attacker will receive a common prompt and will be able to do stuff on your domain. That's initial compromise. Then you move to recon, Recon is when you're inside of the domain and you're seeing what's happening around. You're like looking at which servers you have access to, etc., etc. And from there, you want to do pivoting. So you want to move from server to server, from workstation to workstation, until you find something that's interesting, until you find maybe credentials lying on a share, maybe a DA access lying on a share, whatever. You try to find that. And privilege escalation is the last phase, when you actually want to use the credentials you found and hopefully, for an attacker, get that golden goose of a domain admin. So now I'm going to talk about these common attack vectors and how we usually attack organizations to demonstrate the potential vulnerabilities. What we usually do are assume breach tests. So in assume breach tests, the reason why it's bold is because in assume breach tests we mostly do recon, pivoting, and privilege escalation. Now in this talk, I'm going to be mostly focusing on pivoting and privilege escalation because it's the thing that you can defend against most. And we're not really going to talk about initial compromise, because initial compromise is something that can take months and it doesn't bring a lot of value to the organization. So that's why it says your best bang for your buck, because while doing an assume breach, you don't spend like a month paying a consultant trying to get into your organization, and you'll get literally no value out of this because someone will click on that phishing email at some point. So what you're interested in is checking what they can do after they got in the account of Bob from finance, and this is what the talk is going to focus about. So these common attack vectors are going to be ranked roughly by how easy it is to carry out. So the first ones are going to be fairly easy, and then at the end we're going to move into more technical stuff. Now the first one is not really an attack vector, it's more something that's often overlooked in organization. I would like to spend a little bit of time talking about it. It's the case of local admin. So in a lot of organizations, what we see is that there's some people who want to be local administrators, like developers, for example. I'm a developer. It's important for me to have this local admin access. The problem is, if you give local admin access to anyone or everyone in your organization, you expose yourself to a lot of problems. So, for example, the first thing, something we see a lot, is credential theft or credential dumping. When you have local admin access, you can dump credentials, meaning access credentials of users that logged into your system previously. So for example, if I'm Bob from finance, I have a problem with my laptop, I go to IT. IT says, okay, well, I can fix it, I just need to log in with my IT credentials, maybe domain admin credentials, who knows, sometimes it happens. I have to log into your computer, I'm going to fix the problem. They do it, they fix the problem, they ship the laptop back to Bob. If Bob is a local admin, they have their credentials, and they can then use them to, well, become domain admin if the IT guy is a domain admin. And then all of a sudden, you came from, Bob from finance, who has access to the finance shares, to an IT person who has access to all the IT shares, which is a problem, of course. There are several credentials you can dump, and TLM hashes. So a hash is an imprint of a password that you can crack offline. You can also pass this one, but it's not. You cannot pass all the hashes. You cannot just take a hash and say, hey, it's my hash, authenticate me with that. It's not going to work with all the hashes. There's something called network access account that you might, if you know, you might have encountered. You use it if there's a machine that's not domain joined but still needs updates. You use the network access account. Now, if you're local admin and the network access account logged into your machine, you can have the credentials in plain text. So an attacker will have username and password of network access account for free, basically, if they're local admin. And you can also dump cached Kerberos tickets, so that's what you can see here. It's heavily redacted, as you can see. It's not really interesting anymore so much, but you can see IDs here. Here that would be username, so bob-finance, whatever, at domain.com. And here it's the service, so it could be shares or authentication services or whatnots. And here it's the end time, so what you need to know is the Kerberos tickets. They're a way to authenticate users on the domain. So if you're a user, you say, hey, here's my ticket, I am Bob from finance, look, because the authority said I was, so you know I'm Bob from finance. Now, when you steal those tickets, they have a limited duration. So in my example, it worked very well because Bob from finance just gave their laptop to IT, and IT just logged in. So 8 hours later, the ticket is still there. But they do expire. If you're a local admin, you can also do a bunch of cool stuff like disable the antivirus, which is invaluable, especially for a consultant, because what I think is attackers will be able to circumvent the antivirus given time, but when you're a consultant and you have 5 days, you don't have that kind of time. You're not going to spend like a month saying, well, I can bypass the AV, don't worry. Just give me 5 more days, 5 more minutes. You don't have that kind of time. So if you're a local admin, it saves you a lot of time. Sometimes we also do ask our customers to disable the AV. If we know for sure there's a security vulnerability, we're going to be able to exploit. But usually we don't really need to. Finally, if you're a local admin, you can perform process injection, which is basically if a user is running a process, you can impersonate them via some voodoo token impersonation techniques. In general, getting this local admin is invaluable for an attacker. That's why, even though you think your organization has a lot of protections and everything, it's a very good idea to really, really make sure people with local admin access need that local admin access. Now we're going to move on to, this was a bit technical, we're going to move on to the first attack, which is a bit less technical, but it's a thing we see. All of these things I'm showing you, it's things we see like all the time. Like last week I saw one of these. 2 weeks ago I did. Like every week we see something like that. It's crazy. Passwords on shares, the best examples. We will always, when we look for, in file shares, we'll always find plain text passwords just lying around. Usually it's in the IT share. You would have deployment scripts with username, password, sometimes domain admin username, passwords. It's rarer and rarer, but we do see them. An old deployment script from 10 years ago, someone forgot about it, bam, suddenly it's there. It is a lot in the IT share, but sometimes we also see database passwords. And a lot of people are like, well, it's a database password. So worst case scenario, they just access the database, but it's not a problem for the domain. The problem is if you're running SQL Server, which most of you do, I guess, if you use Microsoft products, there's something called XPCMD shell, which is an extension of the SQL language that allows an attacker to run code from a SQL database user. So now you went from, yeah, he can just dump the database to he has access to the server. And the neat things with SQL Server users is that they can escalate privileges to local admin pretty easily. So you went from, yeah, it's just a database password, to it's a password to run code on a SQL server that can dump credentials, and there's a lot of traffic on SQL servers because admin logs in, they have to do maintenance and stuff. And then suddenly you went from, yeah, it's just a database password to, I got compromised, the domain admin is compromised, which we all agree isn't great. Now there's also something else that's pretty important, that's also often overlooked, read-write privileges. Sometimes you have shares that have that with people, normal, regular users have write privileges on. For example, IT shares, if you share programs, for example, 7-zip, you have a share with 7-zip on it. If someone has write access to it, they can change 7-zip to put a backdoor in it, and then all the users starting 7-zip suddenly are compromised by the attacker. And that's what you get if you have write privileges on the wrong shares. So what I urge you to do is basically go home and create a regular user. And that regular, like as in you add a user from finance or department that's not IT, and then you check what access they have by default. There are some tools to help you with that. And basically, what's important here is you make sure there's no overly privileged access to shares. Now the second thing, same, still passwords. It's always about passwords one way or another. Weak passwords on the domain. Now, there's an attack, well-known attack. It's called brute force. When you have a user, you submit 1,000, 2,000, 1 million passwords to that user. Problem is, if you're you're using Active Directory authentication, you're going to have a lockout policy. After 10 trials, the user is going to be, or like 3, 5, whatever it is in your domain, the user is going to be locked out. Now, there's another technique, which is called password spraying, which is trying one password for all the users. Now you're going to have a high chance to get a password like that because there will be a user who uses summer 2024, winter 2024, company name 2024, exclamation mark, etc. Now if you have it, don't raise your hand. No, just go home and change it. One of your users will have this. I guarantee you we get like a lot of success there. Now it might not give you domain admin for sure, but it will give you some other privileges for other servers that your user might not have access to. And now you went from a normal finance user to a slightly more technical IT help desk user who has slightly more access. And that's your way to potentially DA. One way to protect you from that, well, now it sounds like a Microsoft salesman, but it is a nice solution. It's Microsoft Entra ID password protection, which works for both Azure and on-prem solutions. Basically, it prevents users from using a list, like well-known passwords that are in a list. So, for instance, let's say you have a very strong password policy. You might have a strong password policy. Let's say 11 characters, uppercase, lowercase, special characters. If you think about it, the password retest 2024 exclamation mark, it's 11 character, retest, R-E-T-E-S-T 2024 exclamation mark. It's 11 characters, it's special characters, uppercase, lowercase, it has everything, still it's a weak password. So this allows you to basically blacklist these easy passwords so that the users don't have them. This is something I also would highly recommend. Now we're moving in a bit more technical realm, but it is something that's also important, something called Kerber roasting. If you have a service account, you have service accounts that run, SQL servers and whatnots. Now these service accounts it's just regular user accounts, but they also need something called an SPN tied to them or service principal name tied to them to make the service work. Now, these service accounts, by default, they have very strong passwords. They have like 20 characters, uppercase, lowercase, whatever. They're randomly generated. You're not going to crack them in 1,000 years with the current technology. And that's also why when you're a user on the domain, you can query the password hash, Kerberos password hash of all of these service accounts. It's not a problem because you can't pass the hash. The only thing you can do is crack it. And as I just told you, you can't crack them because they're really, really strong. The problem comes when you have Bob, our good old friend Bob from finance, who wants to install a SQL server and says, oh, can I have like a little bit of more privileged account? I want to like install my custom SQL server. I need it for, I don't know, for my data. I would really need it. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to create you like an SPN. You're going to be able to run the SQL server. It's all fine and dandy. But the problem is Bob from finance didn't see this talk and has summer 2024 exclamation mark as a password. Now it's in the list. Because if you try to crack a password, you have a list. You probably will have a list of millions of passwords you're trying, and it's really fast. As you can see here, this is a little excerpt of a cracking tool that cracks a password. As you can see, we tried 33 million passwords in 13 seconds, and out of the 27 passwords we tried to crack, 11 were cracked. And it's a small dictionary. Usually you can run this for hours and hours and hours on bigger dictionaries. Now this is a real life case that happened on a customer. So this is something that's not just theoretical. Attackers will do that because it's one of the first things you do when you enter a domain. Now the only way to prevent that is to review all accounts with an SPN configured and see if it's Bob from finance or it's an actual service, SQL service or whatever. That's something that's also really important. Now we're going to move a little bit away from passwords, and we're going to talk about AD permissions. There's a saying when you're an attacker, it's sysadmins reason with lists and attackers with groups. It means that when you're a sysadmin and you look for a user in the AD environment, what you're going to look for, when you look at their groups, you're just going to see the list of their primary groups. So you're going to see their members of SQL Server admins, SQL Server users, VPN, Denmark, Copenhagen office, these kind of groups. What you don't see is which subgroups these groups are part of. So for maybe SQL users are members, SQL Server admins are a member of IT maintenance, and maybe 10 years ago someone decided IT maintenance should also be domain admin. Now it's a very simple example, of course, but this is something we see all the time. Non-trivial paths that are exploited because when you're an admin, this is not like a view you're presented with, but when you're an attacker, this is definitely something you want to see. Now, these are a few tools that are used by attackers. You probably heard about them to automate that. Bloodhound for on-prem and SureHound for Azure environments. It looks like this. It's not that complicated, actually. If you see here, we compromised Alice. Now, they're a member of the support group. Support group is a member of IT support. And these IT support are admin of this client, this computer. Now, Bob, he has a session on that computer, as we can see here. He has a session on the computer, and Bob is also a member of domain admins. Now, as we saw, Alice is a member of is an admin of client 2 by their privileges. Now, since they're a member of admins, since they're admins to this, as we saw earlier, they can dump passwords. So now you went from Alice from IT support or support to Alice, the domain admin, because they compromised Bob. That's the kind of attacks we see, and that's why it's usually a good idea to review this kind of attack path. Now, last but not least, this is the most technical, but then after that, I promise I'm done with the technicalities or the technical stuff. But it is also something really important. This is the Active Directory Certificate Service, or DCS. It's a thing we exploit a lot because it's very stealthy, and it's very easy to get wrong when you're an administrator trying to get it right. As you can see, there's 13 different scenarios that are exploitable, and the way it works is by exploiting a certificate template. So now a certificate is an item. It can be a file. It usually is a file that proves that someone or something is what the certificate says. So in my certificate, there might be written, this is Bob from admin, and a certificate authority guaranteed that it is Bob from admin or from finance. Or it can also say this is the server you're accessing. Like google.com, you have a certificate that says it really is google.com because someone verified it for you. Now, in ADCS, so the certificate service, you have certificate templates, which are used to generate certificates. As you can see, there's 13 different scenarios. We're not going to list them one by one, but just to make you understand like how serious it can be, there's ESC1, which is the first vulnerability that can be used to become a domain administrator from a regular user point of view. For that, you need three things. You need a certificate template that can be used to generate certificates to authenticate. So basically, from a certificate template, you need to be able to generate a file that says, I want to authenticate with that file. You need to be able to specify the name of the object the certificate identifies yourself. So you need to be able to say, this certificate identifies Bob from domain admins. And finally, you need to be able to request a certificate as a normal user. If you have these three, as a normal user, I can ask the ADCS to give me a ticket or a certificate that says I'm a domain admin, and I can then use that, pass it around, say, yeah, I'm a domain admin, please, like, take a look, it's certified, it's valid 5 years, and it was one request or two requests to the ADCS to request that, and then it's valid for 5 years, unless it's revoked. So now it's very stealthy because you need 2 or 3 commands to run it, and you're also exploiting something very legitimate because you're just generating a certificate, and the service is made for generating certificates. Of course, EDR will probably catch it because you want to generate a certificate from a normal user to authenticate a domain administrator, which is not super legit. But we have a lot of times where we had customers and they come to us and they say, yeah, well, it's been 40 minutes. You used to have like thousands and thousands of tries of password by minute, and now there's nothing. Why are you still working, or are you just snapping? And we're like, well, we're domain admin. We're just double checking, but we're domain admin. And they don't see it because it's, again, it's stealthier than the other methods. Now, some honorable mentions. I'm going to go very fast because we don't have time, and it's also some of them are technical. There are some relay attacks where you take some credentials from someone else on the wire and relay them to other places. PXE image, if you use them, you know it's something you use to set up computers, and sometimes they have passwords in them that you can extract. And the 3, we talked about it already. So in conclusion, all of these, what I presented, these are low-hanging fruits. It's not like crazy attacks that like, it's something we do every assignment. This is the standard things we try, and then we try a bit more stuff as presented before. This is something any attacker will try on your domain, including spraying summer 2024 and winter 2024. This will happen for sure. And don't think just because you have on-prem and a hybrid environment with on-prem and Azure, and your on-prem is very small and the Azure is very big, you're safe, because when you're a domain admin, you can also become a global admin fairly easily, depending on the configuration. It's a thing to escalate from one to the other. Now, thanks for your attention. Yeah, stay safe out there. Feel free to reach out. And if you have any questions, I think you can ask them now, or just send me an email.
So there must be some questions. Nope.
Nope.
Yeah.
We do, but the
Could
problem
you
with
repeat the question?
the question is, do if we have tools, I think, to prevent these? We do, but the problem is, tool is only as good as the person who uses it. So then there's, if I would give tools, which I can, if you shoot me an email, or like I think we have also blog posts on that. But the problem is, then you're going to have this like full sense of security, because you're going to be, oh, I run the tools, I'm all fine. But then someone else with maybe a bit more experience would know that actually you're not fine, because vulnerability 14 came out today, and then all of a sudden you're vulnerable again. So yeah, in that case, I would recommend just contact us or another company or something. Well, don't contact another company, because Tim is looking. Don't. We're the best in the business. Yes?
Does that work with just the IP protection you have?
Yeah.
Repeat the question, please.
Oh, what the question was, if it works with?
Yeah, if it works with IP protection, or just network protection.
If it works with network protection, yeah. I think so.
So location specific.
Well, a Zoom breach comes from you being on the network already, so it would defeat the IP protection, right? Because you would already be there. So.
We only have one location, that's why.
Because what you would do, for example, in initial compromise is send an email to someone, and then they would click on the link, and then you would be contacted back, but you would still be on site theoretically, because you would have compromised the client that's on site, right? So then everything would still be game. Everything would still work.
We got time for more questions. Yeah.
So, apart from the certificate problem, a lot of the strategies you talked about were about passwords. And I think most people here know that we should probably try to get away from password-only security, because that sucks. But typically, password is still your fallback if your other strategies, Windows Hello and stuff, are failing. Can that be mitigated somehow?
Can you repeat that question?
No, but can you repeat the question?
Let's try again. So, password only is shitty security. We want users to use Windows Hello, Microsoft Authenticator, all sorts of
Yeah.
combined or some other login thing. But typically, if your Windows Hello fails and if something else fails, your fallback will be, okay, but if you know your domain password, you can still log in.
Right.
Can this be mitigated in the current Microsoft stack?
I'm not a blue team expert, so I'm definitely not going to maybe not give you the best answer, but the only thing I can tell is your best bet is probably to just move away from passwords and try to make your users use passphrases instead. This is the thing that I've been hearing the most lately. Just move away from passwords, and I mean, instead of having a 14 like with characters and 14 digits password with like characters and everything, have phrases like, the horse runs around the field or something.
Battery. Like
Exactly, something like that, something with a horse. I use phrases, sentences instead of passwords. I think that's your best bet, honestly, right now.
Thank you. So, thank you very much, Paul. So the point of this presentation was to, first of all, prepare you for something you're going to hear later, which is the assumed breach that we've been running on Horten, advokatselskabet Horten. So these are some of the things that they have been doing as a part of that test. We'll get back to that. So remember some of the things you heard here. And second of all, I think it's also, feel comfortable with the food and feel comfortable with that, but not with IT. So that's how it works. These two guys have a question.
Just last week we did another assumed breach test for another client, and we had two guys on that one, and they managed to bypass their MFA as well, which the client was quite surprised to see. So, and I'm not even sure Paul knows how they did it, because he was not it. So, he was on another job. So, but yeah, it's just that's also an issue sometimes.
Never feel secure. I asked you one thing, Paul, when we did the run on this. I remember that question was how many of this audience here, of all these fine gentlemen, how many of them can you actually get domain admin privileges on?
You didn't ask it that way. It wasn't personal, that personal, but I would say the same answer is still 80% probably of the
80%.
audience.
And that was on 2 days, right?
5 days.
5 days.
4 days. 4 days.
4
4
days.
days.
So maybe you're one of the 80%. Thanks, Paul, a lot for your presentation.
Thank you guys for your attention.
Now we move on to the next point, which is from AvePoint, one of our partners, one of our trusted partners. When it the company is called AvePoint, and Dean have been flying up to present. Now you did hear some, which is sort of a key element in how to protect evil persons, and protection of Enter ID is one of the elements here. But actually, what you see is that Office 365 and the whole Microsoft suite is getting to be a bigger area of your IT operations. That's for most of the case. I mean, are there any Gmail, G Suite users here? No.
It's going to be a tough presentation.
So without further ado, Dean, the word is yours. And first of all, tell us, what is AvePoint?
Yeah, well, what is AvePoint? So first of all, let's start with pronunciation. It's called AvePoint. AvePoint, yeah, I know, it's weird. Europeans don't like that. But if you say AvePoint, I won't be harassed or anything, don't worry. See, can I use the clicker? Is that fine?
Yes.
Does it work? Let's see.
It does.
Oh, perfect. All right, so first thing, a little bit about myself. I like to start with myself. I'm Dean Westems. I'm Customer Success Manager at AvePoint. Been with AvePoint for about 3 years, and I've done customer success work for about 6 years in different companies across the globe. Always with a focus on adoption, customer use cases, and really making sure that our customers receive the most value from our products. So in that case, I'm not very technical. I studied communication and media, so I'm probably quite the dumbest around here. But that's okay. So I like to do these presentations with a focus on our customer cases, how we help customers and the things that we see in the market, because I strongly believe in knowledge sharing. So first of all, what is AvePoint? So AvePoint is a company, and we are the largest data management solution provider for the M365 and Microsoft platform. That still doesn't sell you very much. I know, right? But basically, we migrate, manage, and protect content. And about that last part, we're going to talk a little bit more today. And for protection, we're talking about retention, we are talking about backups, we're talking about disaster recoveries. Some cool tidbits about us. We have about 17 million cloud seats protected, which is quite a bit, and we have 320 petabytes, and it's almost 350 now, of managed customer data in our storage. So we are one of the largest Azure consumptors in the world, which is pretty cool, so Microsoft can thank us. And basically we have data centers all over the world. So wherever you are, we can protect you, we can help you. And first, today I have 2 topics to discuss with you. First of all, we're going to talk about the shared responsibility model in the cloud. And after that, we're going to talk about storage consumption in the obviously generative AI as well. So start on with the shared responsibility model in the cloud. Who of you have seen this chart? Can I see by the show of hands? That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Ooh, you're getting like 1. All right. So about 25% of you have seen this. If you look at Microsoft Learn, I would highly recommend, if we share the slides, there is also the notes in there. There's some Microsoft Learn on this. Please check it out. Basically, if you move to the cloud, this is what Microsoft will tell you. You are responsible for a couple of things, and Microsoft will be responsible for the other, and some of them are mixed responsibility. Now, this makes it very interesting, because the majority of customers we speak to, as soon as they move to M365, they're like, great, Microsoft takes care of everything. No, unfortunately not. And as you can see, there's actually quite a lot not protected. Basically, the way you can remember this, the easiest is cloud providers are responsible for security of the cloud, and you are responsible for the security in the cloud. That means that in this example, we are going to talk about information and data. If you have M365, you have data, you have to protect that. Don't worry. The native retention that Microsoft offers, unfortunately, is for most customers not enough. Your devices, accounts and identities, and identity and directory infrastructure. Now, we just had a lovely presentation about directory infrastructure. I won't go that technical, but we will talk about Entra ID and backups of Entra ID, because this is a very interesting case. So, for the ones who don't know Entra ID, it used to be called Azure Active Directory, which I think was an easier way, but you know, Entra ID is also here. And not only provides Entra ID you with accounts and enterprise apps and app registrations, it also provides you with groups. It can sync back to your Active Directory on-premise as well with Entra ID Connect, it's now called. Basically, Entra ID is the phone book of your organization for a lot of companies. And that also means that it hosts a ton of identities. Identities of groups, it hosts identity of applications, and it hosts identities of users and devices. And this is quite important. Why? Because we have to protect this. So what have we seen from our fields as well? So we talked to a customer in education. It's a Dutch customer, so no worries, no Danish customers were harmed. And basically, a admin deleted the security group in Entra ID, which is not backed up by Entra ID. So for a couple of accounts, Microsoft 365 groups and Microsoft 365 users, they have what we call a soft delete. Soft delete is a 30-day retention, and afterwards, it's gone. But for security groups, distribution lists, for enterprise applications, for app registrations, unfortunately, there is no retention. In this case, an admin, unfortunately, had an accidental deletion of a security group, and that caused about 4,000 students to not be able to attend class, which maybe for them be the best day of their life, but for an admin, it's a kind of a nightmare. And basically, they had to work towards the whole weekend to just figure out what happened. Because if the admin if the security group is deleted, you can't find it anymore. Eventually, IT team in complete panic mode, and with a simple Entra ID backup, that restart could have been done probably in 30 seconds. So a couple of things that we see more and more often. So Entra ID is more seen as a gateway to services. For example, using SAML or OAuth, where Entra ID will basically become the thing you authenticate against. And that means that organizations are going to connect a whole lot of stuff to Entra ID. We have seen some customers who now have 2,000 enterprise applications. For the ones who don't know what enterprise applications are, it's basically the identity of an application. So if you use single sign-on and you use Entra ID to basically administer that process, it will create an app registration and sometimes an app, enterprise app as well. That is not protected. So if somebody deletes the enterprise app, that means that, for example, you can't access Salesforce anymore. If we are a sales organization, that would be a big problem. So look at it. See what has been protected in your company. See if you have an on-premise backup. And if not, we have some lovely colleagues here with you as well. We can help you with some advice on how to start up as well. So obviously, this is the case for Entra ID. For M365, we have the same kind of issues as well, where you also have to be the one taking care of all the data. The second topic I would like to talk with you is the storage consumption in the AI era. Who of you have a Copilot license? If you want to share that information. Oh, it's actually quite a lot. So anyone rolled it out to the entire company? Troopers, I like it. How is that going?
We're not responsible for doing it. We're just using it.
We're just using it. And have you used it a lot, or is it like a nice to have? We use it a lot. Yeah, this is what we hear quite a lot. So obviously, we like to mention our lovely friends at Gartner. Basically, this was a report they made in 2022, and basically they said, hey, in 2025, 10% of all the data is going to be created by generative AI. I am not sure if that holds, but it is a fairly heavy trend, right? Generative AI, we have seen some discussions with Microsoft as well, that storage consumption can go up to 4 times, because generative AI generates stuff, which means that has to be stored somewhere. And M365, unfortunately, is not free. And obviously, the second trend that we see is that the majority of our customers, but also worldwide, is that the majority of people will start moving to the cloud more. And if you want to get funding for projects, it's probably best that it's in the cloud, because that's where about 95% of your projects will be hosted. So the cloud's getting you more and more responsibilities, and generative AI is adding more and more storage. So basically, what do we see? Over 300 monthly users in Teams, which is quite nice. This is an interesting one. 47% of digital workers struggle to find information. This must be a familiar thing, right? Like 1 million Teams, OneDrive, Exchange. Where did I send that email again? We create about 1.7 MB of data every second, which is insane. And in 2025, it's estimated that about 200 zettabytes of data is stored in the cloud. Quite impressive. But managing this can be difficult. And AFPoint, we are also part of a couple of institutions. One of our institutions that we are a part of is IIM. It's the International Information Management Institute. And together with them, we did a research on about, I believe, what is it, 750 business leaders, 16 countries, 10 industries. Though, truth be told, these are somewhat of more enterprise-graded customers. And basically, the findings were quite shocking. And you can read them here as well, right? 50% of an organization's data is more than 5 years old. I think that might still be a little bit of an understatement. And nearly half of the customers we spoke to had lack of any archiving retention strategies. If we put this in plain man's words, we are not going to delete everything, and we are fine with that. And I am not very fan of that. This means that we keep on piling, we move to the cloud, and we have generative AI. So those three components make a lot of our customers grow with 10, 20, 30 terabytes per month in data just in M365, right? We were talking about M365, that's kind of our thing. And at least 41% of the people we spoke to manage at least 500 terabytes worth of data just in M365. This is a massive problem, because it's causing people to not find stuff, it's clogging up SharePoint search, and worst of all, it's costing you money. Again, this is a free to download report. If you ever want to have a discussion with your executives, please go ahead and download it. It's a very nice report. But I like to look at this problem. So before I went into IT, I did a lot of cooking. So I was sous chef at a restaurant. And I like to look at life when we are working from a professional kitchen. So if we look at the challenge, this is the cupboard. This is how the majority of organizations look like, right? If you ever gone to your parents, it's like instant soup from like 2007. We all know this. And then obviously we have some spices, the whole spice rack that probably doesn't taste like spice anymore. While on the other hand, this is what restaurants do, right? In the majority of European countries, we have very good hygiene protocols. So in the Netherlands, it's called HACCP. You can immediately forget about that. And basically what it determines is you have to make sure that you label your stuff. Till when is it due? How much was in there? When did we get it? And obviously the protocols, as you can't store meat and fish next to each other, you have to make sure that chicken is stored somewhere else. And as soon as it reaches a certain temperature, you have to throw it out. Very basic stuff. But how majority of companies do this is the left one. We'll just keep everything, and then as soon as something rots, then we'll just start to see where it stinks. So how do we tackle this? For us, we look at 4 steps, and this is a very easy. In the practice, this will take a little bit more time and effort. But we look at 4 basic steps. So first of all, we have to know what's in the tenant. If we don't know what's there, we don't know what we can clean up. And if you have 500 terabytes of data or more, or even if you have 10 terabytes of data that your users have created, have you any idea what's in that content? No, right? You don't know. So we can start by easily doing a discovery and analysis, making sure that we know what is your old data, what kind of file types do you host. We have customers storing terabytes and terabytes of Photoshop documents in SharePoint. Is that really the place? They're not very collaborative. So why would you store them in SharePoint? Second of all, once we know what we have, we can make some basic rules to start optimizing the storage. For a lot of our customers, they stop there because they usually got a bill from somewhere and it was very expensive. They got a big shock. And they're like, okay, we got to fix this ASAP. And basically, from there, we just want to make sure that we clean up all the old stuff and that's it. Now, if you want to go a little bit further, we want to make sure that we manage data lifecycle. And here we get into the real retention strategies. And whether you use the retention policies or retention labels from Microsoft, or you use a tool from AvePoint, we don't really matter. But start thinking about business rules. So what content do I have? When is the content still useful? And what do we have to do as soon as that content reaches its age? Basically, if the instant soup is 10 years old, it's probably time for us to throw it out. With that being said, this is a lot more harder than we think because we have to ask users to start labeling. Now, if a business user starts to hear labeling, they're like, nah, no thank you, because they just want to do their job. So there's a couple of interesting ways to do this. We can do this on location-based, but also we can look at step number 4 with intelligent content classification. You might have heard of trainable classifiers from Microsoft, but there's tons of ways to use AI in this, and this is actually why AI is really good because it trains on documents and then it kind of recognizes it, and it will recommend, for example, a retention label. And this will take a whole lot of the pressure off those end users to classify their content. So once you have cleaned up the crap, we're now going to start out new. We're going to make sure that from now on we're going to start retaining the documents that we need, and we're going to remove things that we don't need anymore. Now, if you've done this, you're also going to have way better results in Copilot. For the ones who don't know how Copilot works on the back end, it basically uses 2 pieces of information. So one's your data and one's the access of your data, and that is collaborated in the semantic index. That semantic index is coupled to a large language model. Most of you will know ChatGPT-4, and basically that prompt will inevitably give you an answer. If your data in is shit, the large language model can be very good, but the data out will be crap. And I will give you an example. You see these very nice slides. They were released about 3 weeks ago by AvePoint marketing team. In the last 4 years, we have rebranded at least 3 times. I can't really keep it up anymore. That means that if we, at a certain point, don't get rid of content, it will use all templates. And it will produce content that I'm not happy with. Because I will get my old images, I will get my old templates, and at the end of the day, I'm just very frustrated. And I can't get my work done. So if you are looking into Copilot, or for that matter, have a huge bill laying somewhere, it's good to start discovering what content do I have? Do I still need it? And most of all, can I start working on some real good retention and archiving rules? If yes, at the end, I'm happy for you to start working on Gen AI. That's all for me today. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. And if not, please join me, Jesper, or Eric, my colleague, they're up there for a nice conversation about all of this stuff.
Yeah. We got time for questions. We actually got plenty of time.
Yeah, it was faster than that.
You see the digits over there?
Yeah, it's also something to start
13 minutes worth of questions. So go give it all you got. How many is considering using Copilot going forward? Is that all?
So the people who want it invested in it, and for the rest is like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions? Please go ahead.
No, a comment. So if you have 13 minutes left for questions, that actually means you have cleaned up the garbage in your PowerPoint presentation. Very good.
Thank you.
Meta joke. I like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Does it matter the size of
Hang on.
where you would
Hang on.
recommend certain things?
Is it? Yannick?
Yeah.
Not the other Yannick.
No?
I think it's okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I liked the presentation. It was quite nice. And since I do not work in content creation, I found it still interesting to hear about it. Is there a difference in what you would recommend for customers of specific sizes? So SMB to enterprise,
Yeah.
different tactics?
Oh yeah, for sure. First of all, let's start with the goal in mind, what people have. So if we start talking about this, usually there was some kind of bill.
Sorry.
That's cool for your live stream. So going back to your question, for the majority of customers we speak to, they start with a bill and then they have to start cleaning up. That's usually how it goes. For SMB customers, even though I would love to recommend them to go for a full information lifecycle implementation, they are probably better to start off with just cleaning up content. And then use a partner to start working on an implementation. If you don't have the resources internally, these are quite like retention, but also sensitivity labels. Those projects usually take years to really do quite well, because you have to train people, you have to make them adopt this, or you need to train content. We talked about this before, trainable classifiers have about 1,000 documents needed before you really have some good results. So for a lot of companies, they can't invest that effort into a retention strategy. So what we recommend is, if we have a smaller customer, start with the discovery and analysis. Make sure that you do a rough investigation in what content you have, what you can offload, and then probably most of them will be satisfied, and then afterwards we can always work towards something of an archiving strategy. For enterprise customers, we usually have a lot more resources, and we can work together with compliance teams to set up business rules. And if we know the business rules, and we know the types of stuff that they have to really keep, let's say contracts, HR information, if you're manufacturing, you probably like to keep some of your designs. In the Netherlands, that's about 25 years. You have to keep designs of like bridges and stuff. So if you know it, then you can create it, and then you can make a process around it. So that's how I would divide it up. So first of all, look at what's the size of your companies, what resources do you have, and second of all, look at what kind of business you're in. Municipalities or local governments, they need to keep a lot more of the cases. In the Dutch, we have something called Wet Openbaarheid van Bestuur, which doesn't translate very well to English. It's called the law of public administration. So everybody can ask anything from municipality, but that means that if there's a certain case, you have to have it classified. So if you have a highly regulated industry, then yes, it's kind of a must. So that's how I would do it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Please. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm just wondering, because I heard during the last years, or the past years, more people talking about the difficulties in having these data loss prevention projects working for them.
Yeah.
Expensive
Yes.
tools, but also heavy projects. But I'm just thinking, should be some synergies with the stuff that you are doing here, or is it just me?
Yeah, that is correct. DLP projects are notoriously difficult, because if you don't know your content, you can't make any DLP policies on them. So you start, and that's where usually we come in. AvePoint has, again, tons of tools to also start identifying what kind of content you have, which will make it easier to understand what rules you have to apply. Another thing that really is an organizational problem is that departments don't like to communicate. Compliance teams don't necessarily like to communicate to security teams, and security teams really don't like to communicate to digital workplace, for example, and you need that synergy. If you can't get that synergy, none of those projects are going to go end well. So unfortunately, we have to collaborate, which sometimes is a bit difficult, but that's really how we do it. And then giving insights in data really helps you to make the right business decisions. Anyone else?
Thank you, Dean.
Perfect.
So I will ask Klaus and Yannick to come up here. Yeah. And be mic'd up. Okay, we'll use a mobile mic then. Where's the mic? The mobile? Oh, the stick mic. Den almindelige mikrofon. Ja. Hvor er den anden mikrofon henne? That's for you. You're used to that. Okay. So first of all, this just to frame this whole thing, I'd like to show you a little video, which sort of explains what we're talking about here.
Der er for mange dage. Onsdag.
Onsdag, det er nemlig onsdag. Og du er godt i gang med et angreb.
Det er jeg. Eller...
Hvis du er i gang med et angreb? Nej. Der er ingen, der ved det. Det er hemmeligt.
Nej, det er meget få.
Hvis du er sikkerhedsansvarlig i en virksomhed, så bliver du sikkert passet op af folk, som også her i Motus, som gerne vil sælge dig alle mulige fantastiske sikkerhedsservices. Og de sikkerhedsservices tænker du måske om, at det er sådan lidt black box-agtigt. Altså, hvad gør de egentlig? Det har vi i Motus valgt at prøve at finde ud af. Og det gør vi ved at foretage et angreb på en af vores kunder, nemlig Horten. Og det ved Horten godt. Og det ved vores angribende team fra selskabet Retest godt. Men det ved vores sikkerhedsselskab, Arctic Wolf, ikke noget om. Hvad var formålet egentlig med at lave den her penetrationstest for dig?
Ja, for mig er det jo en trykprøvning.
Ja.
Trykprøvning af vores forsvar, som består af flere dele. Ikke?
Nu er jeg kommet ind i Hortens IT-afdeling. Det har Horten givet mig lov til. Og jeg sidder her ved siden af en flot ung mand, og så skal jeg spørge dig, hvad hedder du egentlig?
Goddag. Ja, men det vil jeg desværre ikke udlevere. Men jeg er udlånt pentester her i dag i hvert fald.
Okay, så du har fået en opgave fra Claus om at angribe Hortens infrastruktur.
Det er rigtigt.
Er du spændt?
Ja, det er. Det her det er noget af det sjove, når du arbejder med sikkerhed. Ikke?
Okay, fortæl mig, hvad du har lavet. det alle jo selvfølgelig gerne vil vide.
Ja.
Har din telefon ringet? Har Arctic Wolf ringet og sagt til dig? And who's been thinking every morning when you got up? Did they call? We're going to find out today. I'm not going to say it yet. But before we dive into the details, I would like to introduce you to Claus from Horten. Claus, first of all, thank you for coming here today, and thank you for volunteering to this experiment. That's been quite interesting. And Claus, I would like you to introduce yourself, and then after that, explain a little about how you see security, IT security, in your domain. And when we've gone through that, we will start working a bit more with the specifics, right?
Well, fairly simple. I'm a security leader in a full-service lawyer firm, Horten. How does that work? Yeah. And well, most of you know what that's implicate of tasks. So let's just get on with it. Lars asked me why I did this, and it's fairly simple. I want to know what gets wrong when I get into the arena. So yeah, as Mike Tyson say, you might have a plan, but does it work? Does my endpoint match the opponents? I really want to know that. And does all of my management plans work? How does the battlefield evolve when I see someone attack us? And you might have seen this scene from Aliens that took this. It's old movie. I presume a lot of you know it, when the Marines have the first attacks with the aliens, and they really just get slaughtered. And it is a really important point for me to have the management knowing what's going on in an attack. So I could talk people, procedures, technology. I will not do that exactly. I would like to zoom further out when I talk about my strategy, because why have I chosen these two pictures for my initial answer to why I'm doing it as I'm doing it. Well, it is, of course, our technology, and it is our people, and how we fit together. But I would like to zoom out and just say why am I here for the business? Because I am here for one single purpose, and it is to ensure that the business continues to run whatever happens. And what's the purpose of the business? Of course, that we have some clients, and we have the business built on IT, and that service is monetized on whatever you can earn money upon. And of course, in our capability statement, we have some things I have to protect, and whatever capabilities you have, if you're a production environment, whatever, you have to go in and protect those capabilities. And so that's my strategy from where you have. So if I zoom a bit more out, remove the clients, remove the money, because I don't really care about those. I care about IT, I care about the business. So, and here again, we have people, technology assets, people, process, technology, as the central point where I bind the business and the IT together. And of course, when we talk about those things, we have two very different glasses on assets or services or whatever we call them. From an IT perspective, we have the asset management. From the business perspective, we have, well, in the security world, we have business impact analysis, and we have very different views on what an asset is from IT and from the business part. And I, of course, have to know both of those views and explain to the business why this is from the business side, a critical asset, and from the IT supporter side, it's just another asset. So have that in mind all the time, that you have to go 360 degrees around the business and have a central view. And most of you know the term CMDB as the core function in well, from my perspective, of the business to correlate all the security thinking. So I'll just zoom in a bit and go into the security framework IT, and here I've zoomed directly into, there's of course a lot of other stuff going on, but I've zoomed into the SOC function and what's keeping and what's feeding that SOC function. That's our threat intelligence. I really want to get the best out of my threat intelligence, and some of my outputs, of course, there are two, for me, really important outputs. That's the direct output, of course, is detection and response, as you have heard 1,000 times before. If there's some threat intelligence that's really nasty, you want to detect it and you want to respond upon it. But you also want a lot more from your threat intelligence. You want to know more about the threats, the vulnerabilities, and your management of those data. So it's not just detection and response, it's much more. So knowledge about your vulnerabilities, can you do things more, enrich those information even more? And in the detection and response functionality, well, you have to know it's not just detection and response. How do you detect it? How do you correlate all those data? How do you run actions on those correlated data? And from the business part, a lot of governance functions in the business. And today, we are zooming in on our incident response procedures, because how do you ensure that your incidents are getting treated before they grow to major incidents, before they grow to critical incidents. You don't want to engage your disaster recovery plan because you have a random breach somewhere in the business. Hopefully not. So I'm zooming in from the governance part here on the incident response procedure. Again, the central denominator is the CMDB. So 2 years ago, roughly, I had the task of looking at the SOC service in Horten. And I had to figure out what I'm going to do. Our SOC, we had a SOC, external SOC, and I had to figure out, do I want to continue with that service or do I want to move it to something else? Do I want to in-house it? Do I want to have another vendor? And I took all these parameters just been talking about into consideration. And here I have set manual response, and the manual response here for me, that's of course only just in my head, because that's the incident response procedure. I'll just correlate it into one big one big function. So yeah, and not surprisingly, as we are here today, I chose Arctic Wolf. Yeah, let's go on. So that's actually where we end up here today, because then now here 2 years later, I've implemented the SOC service. I've chosen an assumed breach targeted attack, and this is, as I said in the video here, this is really the fun part of being in a security management role. It's the only two weeks a year where you can really play with your governance and your technology. Because what I really like to do is to get the most out of each attack. Also, if there are any incidents in the business, I always think, okay, if this was not managed, what else? What would be the next step? How could this evolve to something that I don't want to see? So I utilize every incident as much as I can, as much as time allows. So I chose an attack, and I chose a scenario I wanted to test in my governance. And actually, one of on the governance side, I chose not to. I chose to be invisible, to see what will happen in my organization if I don't, if I do nothing. For instance, if I had not been there, or if I've been on vacation and didn't take the phone, what would happen? What would my supporters do? What would my other colleagues do? That was my task to myself, also to see how is my procedure interpreted in the business. So with these words, I think we should. So
Klaus, a lot of people would like to know.
Yeah.
If someone called you when the guys from Retest Security, they were playing around, did they?
Yeah, they called.
They called.
Yeah. So
And do you know who called?
No, I don't.
He stands right there. So actually, the thing is, and believe me when I say this, we wanted to conduct this test, and I actually did call Arctic Wolf and asked them. I asked Sebastian, he's the head of the SOC, and I said to him, "Are you willing to stand here today with your people to explain what happened?" And he said, "Yes, I am." So when do you attack and who do you attack? And I said, yes and yes. I'm not going to tell you. These are the rules. And he said okay to that. And I think that's pretty gutsy. So what you are going to hear is Yannick. You will learn to know who he is and why he was the one who made the calls. And you will also know that the context is that he knew nothing about what was going on. Right? Is that right?
Yes, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, kind of. What do you mean, kind of?
So kind of in terms that Arctic Wolf called and not retest security. So I think that got mixed up a bit. Yeah, retested the pen test. We did not know about it.
Nope.
Yeah, today I'm going to talk a little bit about the use case that we have with the pen test at Horton. Yeah, for that, we going to start with, the speaker, that's me. I started at Arctic Wolf 3 years ago. I started as a security analyst after uni, and then went over from security engineer 1 to security engineer level 2. Daily business for me mainly is working in the SOC and triaging incidents, saying business email compromise. As Paul already said, there's a very well-known attack technique for initial compromise. So we alert on phishing and then do call out in case that was successful, or over to creating pen test reports for customers where it's like malicious PowerShell gets executed. All ranges is what I deal with on a daily basis. And then, yeah, let's go over to a little bit of the content breakdown, what I'm going to talk about today. So at first, I will introduce a little bit the SOC, short rundown of what we do, how it's structured, where I sit there, and what can be expected of us. And then we're going over to principles of the SOC, which is like logging, checking, and reacting in like a baseline, and give you a few examples, what helps us to do our job well, and then we'll go over to a high-level overview of the pen test timeline. So the timeline was over a few days, which we initially did not know about, but this gives you kind of an example how this can be viewed. And then, yeah, we'll have 3 example alerts that I brought for you today, how my colleagues or I worked on these alerts, and yeah, a little bit in depth how we did it. And yeah, with that, we start with the SOC level structure at Arctic Wolf. It's structured in 3 levels that can vary from provider to provider. I brought for you some neat icons for each level to not spread it too much with words. So in our level 1, where I started at Arctic Wolf, the phone basically displays that we do there 24/7, 365 days coverage for calling out to customers and getting calls, no matter if it's on a Sunday, midnight, and one of your users called you and said, hey, I'm in trouble, I clicked on something that I shouldn't have, you can call us if we not have already called you. What SOC level 1 also does, and what was nice for me when I started, is we do runbook-based detections. So we have like a playbook that helps our analysts to analyze certain alerts, and this helps us to train our analysts in the level 1 and then helping them to exaggerate to level 2 or level 3 so that we can grow in-house, which for me was a very good experience. In level 2, we also have detections and we do investigations, but it's not runbook based. But in level 2, it starts that you need to have a certain level of experience so that you can, if you look at an IDR alarm from your intrusion detection system and it says, it's C2 traffic, but it's your internal domain of the customer, then I know, okay, it's the internal domain from an internal host. I will ask them, maybe alert them with a low priority, and then we can talk to the IT sysadmin team and say, hey, yeah, this is expected traffic. But to realize that how you would want to do something like that in level 2, you need to have experience. So that's part of the role. Incident triaging. Other part is creating pen test reports like I did for Klaus and his team. And in level 3, this bad-looking icon basically stands for true positive investigations. So when we do in level 2 detect an adversary in the network or a potential adversary, level 3 helps us and jumps in and works together with us and the customer to get the adversary either out or contain the problem on the endpoint if possible, and then help the customer with the investigation. And yeah, that's what level 3 does. All in all levels on our end work together as one team. We do regular exchange on ideas, tips and tricks, how to investigate things, which for me as a level 2 is very insightful. And yeah, that's basically how we work in our SOC. So this is the slide about logging, checking, and reacting. So on the left-hand side, I'm not a professional consultant, so I hope it's understandable. On the right, you see that we have our kind of backend database, and we have 3 different log sources I brought for you today. One is the Arctic Wolf agent. One is our sensor that we deploy for customers like Horton, and then it was a third log source, in this case, the Defender EDR. All 3 log sources help us in the SOC to gather as much info as possible about a potential attack. So what log sources do help us with that? The agent from our end on a Windows host, in this case, for example, we can check the PowerShell operational logs, sysmon operational logs. For that, you need to install sysmon, obviously, but this is sysinternal tool, so that helps. The security audit logs and Defender AV operational logs. All of these help us on the endpoint. What is with networking? The sensor helps us with DNS traffic, HTTP, whatsoever routes through your main switch, and yeah, provides us with traffic detections. And then if you do use Defender EDR, for example, we can query that API data and make use of the Microsoft EDR alerts and logging that Defender provides. For that, I will provide you with 3 examples of how this looks on my end when I look at this data. So at first, we look at a log from the Arctic Wolf agent, which was from the pen test. In that case, on the left-hand side, we have a timestamp, always very insightful and needed for us because we need to create a timeline for the customer, right? When you look at that, next thing comes the device name. In that case, that was the pen tester's temporary host in the customer's network. Usually, that is quite known that you want to create a host for the pen tester in an assumed breach. This would be for a sample host with a user that has clicked, as already explained by retest, on a phishing link, and on that host we are looking at today, which is fortunate for us that Horton did roll out our agent on all hosts. So we do need visibility, right? That's the key factor. In this case, we had visibility. We have an event description which shows us, okay, there is a PowerShell toolkit, which is called PowerUp SQL. And what was the data set we got this from? I think there rings a bell. That's the operational PowerShell log. So that helped us to detect malicious code. And on the right-hand side, you see the event code from the PowerShell log and part of the message that was in there. So this is how we then see, for example, an endpoint log. Next thing that also helped us in the pen test was the sensor. Here we have a traffic log. We saw it from a Windows server, and we saw it that there was a GET request to a GitHub user content from the Secure This Shit master repository. this repository will come into later on stages and will be very helpful. So this was an HTTP request, for example, and was helpful. And last thing, what also helped us during the engagement was Defender EDR. That Horton took care of this, included the API on our end, which helped me and my colleagues to check that. In that, on the left-hand side, we again have the timestamp, helps us with the timeline creation for the customer in the final report. And then we see that Defender alerted on Active Directory Certificate Services attack tool. You heard about this from Paul. You want your ADCS to be secured, right? If we see this detection on our end, that's quite insightful, because Defender also provides us with a tool that was used. In this case, this was certify.exe. Easy command, find/vulnerable, and then that will help a pen tester or a potential adversary to find vulnerable certificate templates. And as you can see, kind of to round it up, all three different log sources help us to get a different view and a different angle during the pen test and during a potential attack. So next thing we're going over to is the overall engagement timeline. We did not know whether there was a pen test happening, how long it would be, etc. So maybe, since you also don't know it, we start at the 1st of July at 9:55. There was malicious PowerShell code detected. It was an execution to gather credentials and data, which, well-known first step from a potential adversary. So what we did, we analyzed it, and after 19 minutes, we alerted the customer with a ticket and created this for a PowerUp SQL PowerShell toolkit detection, and then directly did a call out at 10:16. And then after 13 minutes, we called out to, or the call was finished at 10:29, and we had confirmation that this was indeed a pen test. Why indeed a pen test will come later on when we do the first example alert, that we already reached out to Horton's escalation number with the indication that this is very likely a pen test. Their service desk employee did not afterwards, Klaus told us that he should not have told us that it's a pen test to keep the keep the radar low. But that's how it goes. But that's how you also see where you might have or can implement better processes, right? But yeah, at 10:29 then on 1st of July, we knew, okay, there is a pen test going on. We did not know how long it would go, but from that time on, we then obviously took care of the Horton alerts more in depth, but also with in mind that there is a pen tester and not a real adversary. With that being said, as you might have read already, there is it says pre-stage ransomware, which is something you actually do not want to have during your pen test engagement, right? It's not very common to do that. Usually during the pen test, you want to get, show where you have weaknesses in your infrastructure, but not actually exploit them. So with a little bit of a backstory, me and some colleagues from Canada had an engagement with a Canadian customer where there was actually a pen tester in the network, and during the pen test engagement, an adversary compromised the network. So we had the pen tester active in the network and an adversary, and the adversary tried to basically run ransomware and get the customer into a very bad position. So we had to discern between the two, which was it was a heavy load, but it was possible to mitigate this. But with that in mind, when we see this now, after we had this a year back, we do take that into consideration, what we had experienced already with other customers. So at 9:42 on 2nd of July, our backend threw us this alert, and we investigated, and then to get to the next slide, we ticketed Horton, and we also isolated the host. On the far left, we are now at 10:40. So after 50 minutes of investigation, taking into consideration what happened, we isolated the host of the pentester and alerted as urgent with reference to the Lawrence ransomware detection, and called out. After 12 minutes, we were able to finish the call with a confirmation that this was not actually ransomware, and I will later on show you that it has not been direct ransomware, but we have seen indications for it, and then our backend does throw us an alert to give us the heads up that this could be. So in this case, it was good. Pentester run a normal script, and we were able to, isolation was lifted then, get the host back on track, and close the ticket. And then on July 3rd, we had another suspicious tool detection. Might be familiar with the Defender alert from earlier. There we had a suspicious LDAP query from Certify, which is a C# tool. While on the boards, the analyst did some research and was able to find the Ghostpack GitHub repo for Certify. And then what we usually do is, when we then create the ticket and call out, we do try to put in that information to help the Horton team in this case, and tell them, hey, yeah, we've seen this tool being active, very likely again related to pen testing activity. Certify helps to find vulnerable certificates in ADCS or vulnerable templates. Prompt response from Horton, which was really great. So we did not even need to call out because it was that quick on the ticket. So and with that, we will can conclude that usually pen tests take, so depends on the engagement, but in this case it was over several days. We did work with Horton after we have initially detected the pen test. What we do is we send out a questionnaire and say, hey, would you like to work with us? Do you tell us when the engagement will stop? This helps us to to scope it for you and on our end. Klaus and his team did so after we've initially detected it on the first day of the engagement, which probably is a good thing that we did so. He told us that it will go over 4 days, and then we did so. After this is the finish line of the timeline, and let's go into the first example alert. This is again a timeline. As you can see, it starts on the 1st of July. This is for one of the alerts that we send out. In this case, it started at 8:50 that we did see a hands-on keyboard logon in Active Directory from the STC user. So round about an hour later, commands were run from that user, and we have seen a PowerShell execution of a download string from Secure This Shit repository, and in that case it was the invoke sharp SCCM PowerShell file. 1 minute later, our detection threw an alert on our board, and we started to investigate this, and it was for multiple files. I would just want to point out 2 of them. They're kind of interesting because they helped us to do some research. And after 14 minutes, the analysis was done from our end. The analyst was able to get a GitHub link, which is related to an offensive security repository from a pen tester on GitHub. And with that, we alerted and created a ticket at 10:16 for Horton, coupled with a phone call. And here we called the service desk alarm number, which in this case, we indicated if this was indeed related to pen test. Now you might be able to see why would we indicate this. If we see something like this, content from a known offensive security, from an offensive security repository, we can indicate this to the customer to then help them and their team with the sysadmin team. Maybe they are not aware of this, and then we add information to the original alert to help with running the investigation. And then after the confirmation from the call out with the service desk employee, we got final confirmation from Klaus, primary contact, on the ticket 20 minutes later that this was a scheduled pen test and that we caught it, and then we were able to close the ticket. Then one more thing on the analysis. This is basically what the analyst looked at. And the upper part on the two pictures, you can see the 2 files that we indicated about, located in the security shed repo. And then in the lower part, there is the README file with stating there is a very experienced pen tester who is running this repository, and it's working for German pen testing company, and seeing this during the investigation already helps us to scope it a little bit on our end. Nonetheless, did we still call out and alert as high, because obviously also adversaries can make use of pen test repositories. But indicating that this is a pen test always makes sense to scope it. And then the example alert number 2. This was on the 2nd of July, and in this case, we are looking at the Lawrence ransomware one. At like 9:30, we had elevated logon success with the STC user. This means there is like special privileges assigned to the user at that time, which was not the case on 1st of July, as you might remember. So in this case, the STC user had already more privileges assigned to himself. Commands were run on PowerShell, and like at 9:42, this was seen, and at 9:43, the detection for the PowerShell operational log threw us an alert that was generated for potential ransomware usage. This is based on specific keywords that you would see in the PowerShell code. I cannot show them here because obviously that's our proprietary detection, but we did verify keywordings, and then additionally what we have seen is that the keywords still related to the repository of the offensive security repo in GitHub. Nevertheless, did we not assume that this might still be the pen tester because of, as I explained to you, engagement a year ago with a Canadian customer where we would have an adversary in the network. So there is, every time we need to take other things into consideration. This time we alert the customer, raised a phone call, and then a minute after that, at 10:41, we contained the host. We did so as to contain the threat before it can spread, so there is no inbound or outbound traffic from that endpoint anymore. And we couple such a containment always with a call out to then provide this info to the customer. And then also a call out helps to get your IT team quickly onto the ticket. Obviously there's daily IT operations, right? Your sysadmins do all kinds of stuff. Call out helps always. 10 out of 10 times it's appreciated, or 9 out of 10 times that it's Sunday and 2 a.m. But yeah, this case, the containment was lifted at like 11 minutes later because we got hold of someone on the escalation path. They confirmed with the pen testing team that this is correct. We found the repository under the analysis, and it is indeed not ransomware, so we could lift containment after the phone call and close the ticket. And then example alert number 3 in this case, on the 3rd of July, I took here a service installation. So we had an old domain admin account from Horton, which you have heard from from the previous talk from Paul, domain admin is the crown jewel, right? You want this to always be protected. If that is active during your pen test engagement, we already know, okay, we knew on the first day, but I brought this to also re-reference this. Domain admin account during the pen test engagement means there is a lot of insights from the pen test for the customer to work on, because that's something you do not want to have during your pen test engagement. But if it's your first one, it provides you with a lot of insights on how you can get to the domain admin and what you can mitigate in the future, right? So we've seen the domain admin being active. We had a remote desktop logon from an IP. The IP was the temporary pen test host. So Pentester has been able to gain domain admin privileges, and then there is a time difference in there where different things happened. I wanted to point out the service installation because this helps us to also show that the agent of us does not just take sysmon into consideration, but also the host's active AD security audit logs. And in that case, we have seen that the decked service domain admin has been installing a service on the host named svc hyperf via PowerShell at 1419, and 1 minute later, our detection through this and matched it to a known exploitation technique. Overall, the CMD exe was used to echo an up exclamation mark into the hyperf pipe. And then the analysis took place 5 minutes. What we then do is, okay, what is the service name, output, and pipe name? And then 5 minutes later, a ticket was raised with Horton. We did not do a call out because it can happen, but it's very unlikely that a real adversary would name their service hyperf and then also name the pipe hyperf, right? You would not, it's not very common. Obviously can happen, but you wouldn't bet on it. And therefore, we did not do a call out. We alerted this time on Medium because we knew the customer was in a pen test engagement, and then we got confirmation from the service installation that this was part of the pen test actions, but on that host, pen tester was not as successful as previously with gaining domain admin. Yes, these were my example alerts. What are the key takeaways? In my opinion, first one is that it's not, as you've seen, we had Arctic Wolf detections, right, after the command was run, but we do not just use the detections, but we also take into consideration surrounding logs. As I told you, we have network logs and endpoint EDR from Microsoft, for example. So the better visibility the customer provides for us with as much log sources as we can, the more we can look and check into surrounding logs. We call out and verify. This is, for us, very helpful since we do get instant feedback and updates from the customer and from his IT security team, and it helps us to then discern, is this a pen test, is this an adversary, or is this maybe a sysadmin doing an internal audit? And the third takeaway is that we change processes if needed and contain a host. As I said, it's not common to see ransomware detection during your pen test engagement, so we contained the host even though we already knew a day before that they are under an active pen test. So we deviate also sometimes from our own processes just to take into consideration that there might be something riskier going on. Yes, and with that, thank you everybody. And if there are any questions, I will give you the mic.
It's just like there's a language with the attackers, like the Pauls of the world, sitting out there and you sitting in there and they're having fun.
Yeah, I mean, Paul is on the good side of... So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
And I don't know how Paul actually touched my PC when he was down there. I'm a little worried about it now. So. Klaus?
For me, this is really why this is so fun. I think this is really, really, really fun. As I said before, this is the 2 weeks in the year where I really have a lot of fun. And And for me, when I try to make the obstacles, I only have one bullet. So, and when you discover it, my bullet is gone. Then you see, okay, now I'm managing the attack. And of course, when I review the scenario, and just as you said, my supporters confirmed that it was a pen test, I just said, damn it. But that's on me. That's my scenario. And that was one of my hiccups. But next time, not even my supporters will know there will be an attack. So and of course, I will change the scenario every time I have a scenario. I buy them, they cost money. I will have absolutely maximum value for the money of my scenario. So I will change the management approach. I will change the attack scenario. And why do I do that? Well, you did see they had success. I'm one of the 80s. They did have success gain domain admin. And I'm happy they did, because I don't see myself as fail-proof. I don't see the technology as fail-proof. As all of you have inherited from someone else. But your task is to harden, and just continue doing it, because they're continuously getting new technology like AI, we just discussed also before. So it's never-ending journey, and it's never-ending fun. Let's have fun these 2 weeks a year. And the sum up of these penetration testing, well, yeah, of course, these two things, but you learn so much when you have finished an attack. You really do. Not only from the individual attacks, where you can see, oh, why didn't I have that security function enabled, but also from the process. Now, as I said before, I took myself out of the equation as good as I could, because Arctic Wolf kept calling. My supporters kept asking me, should I do something? Should I do something? I said, no. But it ended up going fairly successful for my part, as I see it. I have a lot of improvement to do still. I have a lot of functions to still implement. But doing it in a strategic manner, systematic manner. You just keep on hardening your environment, and I really do love that. I really do love, implement a technical security framework, so you don't have to have everything in your head, but lean on the knowledge of the entire world that has built these technology security framework. Why not do it? They are often free on the internet. Hire a consultant if you are not familiar with them, but do it. Get 360 around your technology, and then measure your gaps, and start with hardening your lowest resilience. And don't forget the security governance. Don't. I think it's really underestimated in many companies, that how do you in reality, how do you in business as usual, day-to-day work, manage your risks, from the small incident risk to the major risk that can break your company? Do you have that governance in place? Do you manage the huge risk? Do you manage the small risks? Also when they get elevated, escalated. And do that escalation chain, is that working? Pick out some of the people and ask them, if they get an escalated risk, what will you actually do? Because you are the leader of this area. You manage this data if you're a business owner. Then it's your business. Then it's not the IT department. The IT department will try to support you as good as they can with the information they're being given, with the tasks they're being given, but they cannot manage your data. It's you as the business owner that manages those data, thereby also you being the risk owner of this data. Then, again, go back to the business impact assessment. That's on the business part. The technical framework, that's on the IT part. Let's meet in the middle. So, yeah, so write down your governance, have a technical, systematic method to go 360 around your security measures and test them. Why not? It's so fun. So yeah, I know it costs money, but I really recommend it. So yeah, any other?
Thank you, Klaus. Any
My pleasure.
questions for Klaus? We just got time for one question and then it's break time. Yeah.
Me again.
Yeah, you again.
Thank you. Well, it's not for Klaus because Klaus did very well, and the other presentation from Arctic Wolf also really great, interesting insight. Nice watching both sides of it. I like it. The time on the first on July the 1st, 34 minutes for confirmation before you decided what to do. Yeah. The second day, 59 minutes before containment. Very nice. And the third day, 11 minutes for confirmation. What I'm wondering is that fast enough? We know that the time from breach to breakout and lateral is getting shorter almost exponentially by now. So is that fast enough?
So when...
That's a good question.
Yeah, so usually when you look at average dwell times of adversaries in a network, which usually is in confirmed compromises can range from a week to up to 3 years until adversaries are actually discovered in networks. We try to be within the first hour of any detection to directly hand out information to the customer. In case of the first alert we sent out to Horton, that was after 13 minutes. So in that case, we would have already known that there is an adversary in the network, and we would be able, if Horton would have said, no, that's not us, contain the host, which makes it invaluable that you do it as quick as possible, but you also do not want to just send out alert after alert, and they turn out to be false positives, because then noise gets so hard on the IT security team on the customer's end that they might get blind for actual true positives. So we do always take into consideration surrounding logs, and that sometimes, in case of a ransomware incident, can take seconds after we know, okay, this might be true positive ransomware, or in that case, for verification that this might have been related to the pen test and that this might be code from the offensive security part, it takes longer. But we always try to stay within the first hour of the compromise to be active in that time, and then after an hour that we either contain the host, called out, or have been active with the customer and work on the incident.
I would really like to comment, because what you're saying, that's really, when you ask, I do not recall who asked, when the answer, the question you asked, that's when I'm worried. Exactly that scenario I'm thinking about, and that's exactly those scopes I was looking at when I reviewed all these, when I reviewed this attack scenario, and just to give a quick feedback, exactly those time measures. That's something I have been changing in my incident response procedures in-house, because of course I'm reviewing how can I make most obstacles from an attacker. Of course I'm doing that, and I know that we have robots doing automated attack techniques, and they can get really fast if they have gained their momentum, if they have their success criteria in place, and I want to stop them before they get all their success criteria in place. So yeah, I try to harden it, and I will try to harden it next time also. But indeed, again, you cannot let scares, let the fright dictate your approach. Have to just do methodically, you know the word I'm trying to say, and just take it step by step. Doing your baselines, harden your baselines, see what you haven't seen before by having skilled pen testers doing things like the very stealthy certificate attacks. Wow, they are so stealthy. It's so difficult to be found by threat intelligence data because it's mostly, until the attacks execute, it's mostly just work procedures that threat intelligence will perhaps not discover. So, and then again, we're getting back into the discussion of how can you enrich your threat intelligence. So don't throw away those data that don't end up being a detection and response. All the leftover data, it will enrich you with vulnerabilities and future improvement for your hardening, for the hardening of your business, the overall resilience. So I think they are so important. So thank you for mentioning that, because that's really my concern also.
All right. I would like us all to give these guys a hand. Thanks for flying up. Thanks for coming and sharing. Now we'll 5-minute question. 10 minutes break. So 5 minutes past. Here, back again. Toilets, as I just mentioned, far out there. There's a few more up on top. There's coffee machines there, there, and there. Croissants there. Give it a go. Right, Jeffrey? So now you heard about some of the part of the IT security service of Arctic Wolf, which is a partner of us. You heard how the reaction was, but there's another part to this. When you run an IT security operations, you sort of also need all sorts of other stuff for the security journey, and that's major. That is primarily revolving around something called the concierge team, and we have a fine representative from the concierge team here today, Andrew. Jeffrey.
Yep.
So please.
Okay. Hello.
On you.
First off, can you guys hear me okay? All is good? Okay. Hello. I'm Jeff. I'm from Arctic Wolf, and I'm going to talk to you about a day in the life of a concierge engineer. So we just had a cool presentation from pen testers and from our SOC, but there's a whole other side to Arctic Wolf as well. That's the concierge security team. Our mission is, let's say that the SOC is usually kind of reactive, you know, like, oh, something's going on. There's a threat actor in your network. Let's go in, let's fix it, let's take a look at it, let's call the customer, figure that stuff out. But there's also a kind of a more strategic side. Our mission is more, we chat with you, we call you up, we have these meetings, we say, hey, how are your security controls? How are you feeling today? So actually, I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to ask folks out there right now, by a show of hands, how confident you feel about your own security maturity. And don't worry, the internet can't see you, they can only see me. So, good, good. Not so good. Okay. So it's part of our mission to reach out to you and to help you figure out what it is that you need to do to get you to a happy place, make you feel a little bit better about sleeping at night, about making sure you have all the security controls in place to make sure threat actors can't get into your network. And then, of course, things happen. I can't lie. Things happen. What can we do to make sure that damage is, what's the word, contained, mitigated, limited, when something does happen, and how to clean it up afterwards, right? So these are all real things. So having said that, let's move a little bit forward. Oh, a little bit about me. Okay. So I've been in the business for a long time, 20-ish years, 30-ish years. My background is Unix, Linux, Mac, Windows. Systems and security is where I started, Unix System Developer Shop. I spent, I don't know, 10-ish years at UC Berkeley in the science side, helping to build computational clusters. We also had web servers and mail servers, of course. And of course, those were the days, so, you know, we're talking 1990s, 2000, around there. If somebody said something like, oh, virus or threat actor or scanning, everybody looked around and says, oh, what? So yes, machines were getting kind of compromised left and right. That made us really good at detecting what was going on. It made us really good about cleaning things up, and then about educating our folks on what to do to make sure these things don't keep happening. So that was quite an adventure. Moving on into the future, as is so common in the US, because you can tell I'm an American, right? Here and there, a bunch of different organizations. I've been through different kinds of incidents, different kinds of compromises, helped secure a bunch of organizations, and now I've ended up at Arctic Wolf, and it's part of my job to help communicate all those lessons forward to you folks. Oh, I'm an OWASP member as well. Okay. So we have the Arctic Wolf platform, right? We talked about detections, we talked about the agent, we talked about how we see when things are happening inside your network. I want to point out first off that we're vendor agnostic, meaning that whatever you have, we'll work with. We're not interested in selling you a whole bunch more stuff. So if you have Defender for Endpoint or whatever, we'll work with it, we'll ingest it. Our platform correlates all these alerts. Our SOC takes a look at all of that activity. And I want to point out, so there's the triage team, and at the end there's the CST, that's us, concierge security team. In the middle is the customer. The platform, the triage team, and the customer concierge security team We all work together. We all talk. So when something's going on inside the environment, the SOC lets us know. When we think something needs to happen that the SOC can either action or needs to be aware of, we let them know. And then, of course, we talk to the customer. So we meet with you on a regular basis. We'll ask you things like, have you implemented the relevant Active Directory security protocols? Do you have conditional access? Are you allowing users to log in from all over the world? Maybe that's not such a good idea. Maybe there's some locations you want to disallow. Maybe certain times of day you want to disallow. There's all sorts of this strategic information that the concierge team can work on with you. So as the platform. So we tend to talk about proactive and reactive. So we tend to refer to the concierge team as the proactive part. Like I said, we sit down, we talk about your controls. We have tools that we can provide to you to help make sure that you are where you want to be. Let's just say you need to be compliant with NIST 2 or NIST with the T, the other one. There's also the Cyber Essentials. There's various regulatory compliance networks. We can help make sure that you get to these places. And we can sit down with you, take a look at these controls to see what's been implemented and see where your weak spots are, where you're looking good, and give you a health check. We can help identify gaps in your environment. So we deploy our tools for the visibility. We help to advise you for defense in depth, right? So just like I said earlier on, things happen. That includes inside your organization. We know that not all organizations can action everything. There's restraints with bandwidth, human bandwidth, budget, machinery, automation. We make sure that we have you covered where possible. So if there's a section of the network that needs special attention, we can focus there. We make sure that we advise you that an appropriate defense in-depth strategy like network segmentation or like the conditional access I mentioned earlier is a big one. Identity as a perimeter is this new, kind of like the new thing coming up because there's so much Entra ID and so much cloud. You need to make sure that the entry points into your network are secured. So that means people. It also means service accounts. And if you have CI/CD pipelines, maybe that stuff's exposed. Securing your credentials, all of that stuff. Okay, let's move on a little bit. We covered all of this. Let's talk about the team. So, we're the team that's going to be working with you. I want to point out that we have a high retention rate in our security services team. We call it S2. There's concierge security. There's the SOC, and then we also have customers, CSMs, customer success managers. We have high retention, which means that when we're talking with you, the customer, there's going to be consistency in the conversation. It's not going to be re-engaging on the same content all the time. We learn about you. You learn about us. It's cooperation. A lot of our team has various certifications, so CompTIA, CISSP. Myself, I have various vendor certifications, advanced vulnerability management, Metasploit, that kind of thing. There's a wide variety of the different kinds of experience and certifications and training that we all have. We undergo 3 months of training when we join as CSTs, or CSEs, Customer Concierge Security Engineers. 3 months of training just to learn about our own environment and then engaging with you, the customer. Oh, yeah, and we do fun things to keep hold on to people. We have game nights, hackathons, and trainings. We also do external trainings as well. The SANS training, various vendor trainings, OWASP training. This is something we make sure that all of our team has access to. Oh, real world actionable advice. This is a big one. So again, I talked about conditional access control and network segmentation, and I keep bringing these things up because it's really, really important. So the point of all this is real world actionable advice. We don't just tell you do the things. Like I said, we sit down with you, we look at your controls, we see where the weak points are, where the strong points are. We sit down and make sure that the things that we ask you to do can be done, and we'll hang out with you on the phone where appropriate and guide you through it. I'm going to ask you a question. Real-world actionable advice and deploying tooling and guidelines to users. Do you find that to be frictionful in your environments right now? Yes, no? Yes, no?
Could you rephrase it?
When you deploy, is it difficult for you to deploy tooling into your environment? Maybe because there's not enough information or not enough documentation. Maybe you don't know where to start. Maybe you don't know what tooling to deploy. Are any of these concerns for you? Yeah? Okay. These are all the things that we can sit down and help you out with. So we just mentioned all this. Part of the journey that we have, we call this the security journey. You can also think of it just as security maturity model, or the security maturity of your organization. So we have our kickoff, where we get to know each other. We just talk to each other. You know, hey, how you doing? What are your challenges? What's going on today? How's the weather? We have the architecture review, where we took a more detailed look at your environment, what kind of firewalls you have, what kind of EDR you might have, what kind of other tooling is appropriate. We have the log source review. That means that we take a look at your environment and we make sure that all the things which are feeding data into our platform, right, for the detection that we talked about with the pen testing, for example, we make sure that the things that are supposed to be feeding us data really are, and that they're identified correctly. So we sit down and make sure all this stuff is correct. We have the health check to make sure all the agents, so we have agents, our agents are deployed properly. All the other agents that you should have in your environment are deployed properly. Everything's feeding in and getting correlated. We do a firewall configuration review where appropriate. If you have a bunch of firewalls, make sure that you have data feeding into us, making sure that you have sane configurations. So here's another question. I'm going to ask you another question. So presumably you're filtering traffic coming into your environment. How many folks are filtering data going out? Cool. So for example, something that we might recommend is filtering outbound mail, right? So your Microsoft 365, of course, should be sending mail, but probably not your database server. What might happen is an intruder gets into your database server, starts spamming people either inside the company or outside. You can shut that component down with those egress firewall rules. And of course, with our agents and our SOC, we go in and clean all that up. Just hypothetically. Active Directory configuration review, that's relevant to what we were just talking about today. Making sure you have appropriate permissions in your Active Directory, making sure that you're not over-provisioning certain services that allow a threat actor to masquerade as another user, making sure that threat actors can't laterally move inside your network and spread. There was the question of, a little bit earlier, there's a question of can we move fast enough if a server is compromised? If you have defense in depth, if you have accounts, service accounts, user accounts, all provisioned to make sure that they don't have excessive ability to install new software, for example. If we have those controls in place, we can slow down the threat actors. That gives us a lot more time to detect, respond, and remediate. These are all things that we help you out with. Endpoint configuration review. That's where we look at the workstations and the servers in your environment, make sure that they have appropriate controls. Customer validation, that's where, hey, we all get together. Are we all satisfied, all on the same page? And then from there, we move on to what we call the cyber resilience assessment. That's where we talk about things like NIST 2. Oh, how many folks here need NIST 2 as a compliance thing? Okay, cool. So we make sure that we can provide you the tools to determine how on track you are to achieving NIST 2 or NIST with the T or CIS. And these are all tools that you can use to verify where you are in your security maturity or in your security journey to see how secure your environment is. It should give you a little bit more peace of mind, and it allows you to report to management that you're in a good place, or where you need to go, what you need to get to a good place. So we talked about the SOC, but I will actually go back to this for a sec. With the tooling that's in place, we collect all these observations from the firewalls and the agents and the sensors and the scanners. We also have a component where we can scan for vulnerabilities. But when it comes to the agents and the firewalls and feeding in all the data, we have all these observations, millions upon billions of observations. We apply automation. We surface those as events. Anything that looks suspicious there. Then the human component is introduced. Then we have investigations. And then if there's anything that looks like we may need to engage the customer with, we call you up. Maybe Yannick will call you up. So some real world recommendations, some things that might happen for real. Of course, these are examples and excerpts, right? The 2 a.m. call. Let's talk about an incident happening, whether it's a pen test or a real thing. So if you're doing IR planning, if it's Wednesday at 11 a.m., that's one thing. You know, okay, everybody's at work. It's cool. My mind's in the right place. But if it's 2 a.m., I'm useless personally. I mean, some people say I'm useless anyway. But anyway, 2 a.m., I'm always useless. What would speed up my ability to respond? Well, if I have all of my documentation, if I have all my contacts, maybe on a piece of paper, in my desk, in my sock drawer, maybe I need to have an out-of-band communications mechanism to my IT staff, because maybe Slack or Teams, whatever your internal messaging system is, maybe it's offline. So, okay, call them up via Telegram, whatever, get the troops together, form a plan. Keep the Arctic Wolf hotline on your phone, right? So not necessarily on your computer, keep it on your phone, because if you need help in a moment, at a moment's notice, call us up, and we're there. Likewise, we may call you, and you should keep us in your contacts so you know it's us calling you. Perform tabletop exercises, right? So that's, oh, let me ask you that. How many folks here do that currently? How many organizations sitting here in front of me have yearly or whatever simulations where we get the executives together and say, you know, the website's been compromised, there's political messages on there, there's ransomware on there. What do we do? And talk through it. How many folks do that right now? Yeah? Cool. We can help you put those things together. Likewise, live fire, real world style technical simulations. We can help you figure those out as well. Maybe you want to take a Raspberry Pi, throw it on your network somewhere, have it generate a little bit of traffic, and task your IT or security folks to find it and shut it down. These are some of the real world recommendations we might make to you. Pen testing. This is kind of part of what we all are here talking about today. So there was the pen test, there was the SOC report. Now the SOC report's going to come to my team, and we're going to make recommendations to give to Klaus. We're going to meet later in the week. We're going to talk about it. We're going to have real world recommendations with documentation and say, hey, these are the things you should focus on. Here are the tactical components to prevent your Active Directory services from being compromised. Here are the defense in depth type protections to prevent further spread should it in fact happen again, which of course, oh no it won't, but you know, the world is what it is. Slow down an infection should it happen, help to clean it up when it does happen. And disaster recovery. How can we make sure that we recover, and how can we make sure that the environment is clean during and after recovery? Practice makes perfect. Test, test, test. We just said that a bunch of times. We will also work with you to make sure that your tooling is working correctly. So we talked about containing hosts. We'll reach out to you and say, hey, we'd like to test that from time to time. Right? Things change, new operating systems, changes in environment and staffing, maybe the agent's not getting deployed. We schedule these tests to make sure that we can actually take action before it's necessary. Oh, this is a good one. Again, we're talking about real-world recommendations and things you can do. One concern I get a lot is, hey, we know we need to make the change, but I don't know if it's going to break anything. So there's this concept of brownout changes. You make the change, we'll say Thursday at 8 p.m. or whatever. You just wait 2 hours and then you roll it back. Then you look in your logs, or you ask your helpline folks, did anybody call? Were there any failures? Do that again during the workday when you reach a point where there's been no reports in the evening. Then maybe on the third time it's a permanent change. These are real world type recommendations we might make to you. So for time, I'm actually going to go back a little bit. I'm going to ask if there's questions or comments. I've got a little bit of time. Oh. Okay. So this is very similar to what we were just talking about. And I'm going to, for the interest of chatting with you, speed to the end there. So the situation that we ran through with the pen test was not unusual, of course. This is all plays out again and again and again all the time, everywhere, every day. Threat actors are trying to reach out. They're trying to compromise your network. Maybe they're trying to implant ransomware. Maybe they're just trying to use your network to compromise other organizations. So in this particular case, Active Directory accounts are compromised. We detected it. We triggered an incident. We call you up. We say, hey, we see something's going on. Do you need our assistance? Here's what we can do right now together on the phone. It's a voice call, by the way, typically. Then we start the investigation together. We ticket the incident. We try to remediate it. And relevant to the concierge side, right? I'm the CST, concierge side. Here at the end, like we were talking about with Horton, we'll come up with some recommendations at the end. In this particular case that happened, we might talk about implementation of least privilege, meaning are your user accounts over-permissioned? Can your accounts reach places they're not supposed to? Do you have proper network segmentation? Can you make sure that your threat actors are not moving laterally, spreading throughout the network? The enable MFA is kind of interesting because we all talk, everybody knows MFA. Oh, yeah, MFA. Verify, second factor, SMS. But have you considered the fact that not all users need the same level of strictness? We understand, again, that friction might be a thing with certain staff. Does the CEO and does the receptionist require the same level of strictness for MFA? Maybe, maybe not. It just depends on your organization. And that's a conversation that we have with you. If the answer is yes, then that's the way it is. If the answer is no, then we can help you to configure it. So it's more friendly to a receptionist to get in, get his or her job done, and also to make sure the CEO or CFO can get his or her job done as well. That person is probably traveling more often. Maybe that person needs more strict MFA, maybe no SMS, just as a hypothetical example. GPO to make sure that either we block PowerShell or maybe allow listing, disallow listing of installing software in your environment. Make sure that it's all secure in that maybe folks are installing BitTorrent and installing cracked software. That's putting you at risk, both in terms of security, but also legally. We can help you with App Locker or whatever appropriate software is required to make sure you can enforce the ability for users to not install bad software, bad stuff. So, I'm out of time, so I'm going to skip real quick just to the takeaways. We can sit down with you, figure out a solution that works for your environment, something that's customized to you. It's not one size fits all. We know that. We can respond, tactically, meaning we can clean up something that's going on, and we can respond proactively and strategically to learn the lessons to make sure it doesn't happen again, and leave your environment in a more secure location, or a more secure place. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
So we are on a tight schedule now. So we are going to continue, and we are actually going to talk about something in Danish. Og det handler om det, som I alle sammen har tænkt allermest på. Og det er det, I tænker allermest på hver dag. Det er det, I tænker allermest på hver aften. Det er om natten, så drømmer jeg om det. Det er selvfølgelig jeres backup. Det er det mest essentielle system, man har i sin virksomhed, for det er the last line of defense. Jeg hører, rolig. Så det, vi gør nu, det er, at vi gerne vil dele noget viden med jer om backup. Og den viden, vi gerne vil dele med jer, er akkumuleret af omkring 150 forskellige samtaler, vi har haft med vores kunder. Det er det, vi kalder et sikkerhedstjek. Og Tim,
ja,
hvem er du?
Hej, jeg hedder Tim Halgren, og jeg er Head of Operations her i Motus, snart Strato, som vi hører om lidt senere. Jeg vil gerne lige hurtigt tælle lidt min baggrund. Nogle har måske mødt mig før. Jeg kommer fra Veeam, faktisk. Jeg har været Enterprise Account Manager derude, inden jeg kom til Motus. Og jeg er teknisk uddannet som datafagtekniker i flyvevåbnet, så jeg er vant til at have fingrene nede i materien. Og jeg sidder herude for at hjælpe Motus og jer som kunder omkring backup-strategien, I nu har. Og som Lars lige sagde, så har vi lavet 150 sikkerhedschecks, og der tager jeg lige nogle pain points frem der, som vi kan snakke om her. Og jeg har hørt noget af det, er jo allerede blevet nævnt flere gange af de speaker, der allerede har været på. Housekeeping, det er kedeligt, det kender vi alle sammen, og det er det, vi kan kigge lidt på nu her, så lad os prøve at gå i gang. Det vi har set i de sikkerhedschecks, vi har lavet for vores kunder, det er faktisk, at kun 4% af dem faktisk laver en systemeret restore-test. Det vi så også hører, det er, at det er besværligt, det tager for lang tid, og man kan ikke garantere, hvordan man skal få det sat op at køre. Det vi så ser, når vi så implementerer det, det er faktisk utroligt giveligt for virksomhederne. Jeg ved ikke, om I kender den gyldne backup-regel 3-2-1-1-0. Er der nogen, der kender den? Ingen kender den regel. Nogle nikker, nogle er lidt i tvivl. Har I overhovedet backup? Jeg skal lige høre. Okay, super. Nullet, det er jo faktisk, at vi sikrer os, at de backup, vi har, faktisk kan restores igen. Worst case scenario, det er jo ens backup, de er væk, så skal man jo kunne komme tilbage igen. Og det finder man først ud, når man står med en brændende platform. Med nullet her, der kan vi sætte det op til, at vi laver nogle automaterede sikkerhedschecks omkring restoren, om den reelt set virker ud for de kritiske systemer, man nu har valgt i virksomheden, og man kan få rapporter tilsendt på ugebasis, månedsbasis, eller hvad man nu har lyst til. Det er housekeeping, jeg ved det, men backup-test, det er en del af jeres strategi, og det er en, I skal tænke over, når I sidder derhjemme på kontoret. En anden ting, som vi har snakket rigtig meget om her, det er ransomware. Det bliver mere og mere, som vi hørte Pernille sagde, da vi lavede introduktionen. Vi har set 4 af vores kunder alene i år, som er blevet ramt af ransomware. Det er ret mange. Det er jo mere end 1 i kvartalet. Og 32% af dem, vi spurgte, de har ikke en offline-kopi eller en offsite-kopi. Og vi har faktisk fået de her kunder retur ved, at vi har brugt offsite-kopien, fordi deres lokale backup-data har været ramt. Så det er virkelig noget, der er vigtigt for alle parter, at man skal tænke over, hvor ligger ens data henne. Ligger det kun hjemme i serverrummet hjemme, pizzaboksen, eller ligger det også hos en partner, det kunne være hos os, Motus. Så der har vi allerede hjulpet de kunder med det. Det er noget, I skal tænke over. Housekeeping igen, det er super kedeligt, men det er også rigtig vigtigt. Vi ved jo alle sammen, hvor mange gider gå ned og gøre dit badeværelse rent. Det gider man ikke, det står bare der hele. Det samme med backup-platformen, den kører bare. Den er sat op for 4 år siden af Bente for Marketing, og det er også hende, der har håndteret den. Der skal vi altså bare være opmærksom på. Hvis det er en auto-support, så er der kritiske sårbarheder, som man ikke er opmærksom på. Det vil sige, at andre kan komme ind og udnytte de funktionaliteter, der er. For eksempel, vi hørte det fra Arctic Wolf. Så kan nogen komme ind, finde ud af, at du kører en ældre version af din backup-software. Jamen, så er der jo en spiseseddel, så kan de jo bare gå i gang. Derfor er det rigtig vigtigt, at man ligesom kigger på det her, og ligesom laver noget housekeeping, som sørger for, at man hele tiden har sin backup-platform opdateret. Fra min tid i Veeam, der har jeg haft nogle store kunder. Jeg var jo Enterprise Account Manager, så jeg håndterede de 20 største kunder i Danmark. Og en af de kunder her har kørt version 9.0 af Veeam. Det kan man tænke over, hvor mange år siden det er. Og det var fordi, der ikke var noget ejerskab af platformen, så man vidste ikke, hvem der skulle gøre det. Om det skulle være dem, der leverede den, eller dem, der havde overtaget den. Det var et split der, men det gør jo bare, at den er rigtig kritisk. Vi har også set, at nogle af vores kunder har udskudt segregering af backup-platformen fra sit AD. Så har den været en del af ens produktions-AD, som vi så med Arctic Wolf. Der er en bruger, der bliver kompromitteret. De får adgang til backup-platformen, ligesom det med produktion, så er backuppen væk. Derfor er det rigtig vigtigt, at man ikke udskyder det. En af vores kunder, som er blevet ramt, udskydede det der og sagde, vi tager den efter sommerferien. Ugen efter var de ramt, og det er ikke så godt. Så det er altså ikke noget, man skal udskyde. Gør det med det samme. Gå hjem og kig på det. Find ud af, hvordan det er. Adskillelse af produktion og backup. Det er lidt det samme, som vi lige snakkede om med AD'et før. Hvad sker der, hvis backup-platformen ligger på den samme hypervisor som jeres produktion? Det ligger på det samme server, det ligger på den samme storage-system. Jamen, hvem er det, der arbejder med det? Det er den samme bruger, som har adgang til produktion, som også har adgang til backup-data. Jamen, hvad hvis den persons konto bliver kompromitteret, eller personen har onde hensigter? Så er data væk. Personen kan gå ind og fjerne rapportering osv., så man ikke ved, at backuppen ikke kører. Vi har faktisk et eksempel på en kunde, som også er blevet ramt af ransomware, desværre, hvor man har negligeret lidt det her housekeeping også. Der er en backup, der ikke har kørt i 90 dage, fordi man havde ikke lavet housekeeping på serveren. Det vil sige, at kunden er faktisk 90 dage tilbage i sin backup-data. Hvor mange af jer kunne overleve med 90 dages manglende data? Ikke ret mange, tænker jeg. Det sjove, eller jeg vil ikke sige det sjove, tesen her, det er, at vi kan se, når vi var inde og hjælpe kunden, at V-centret lavede en fejl 90 dage præcis før, at ransomware er blevet opdaget. Så kan man jo undre sig over, at vide, om der er nogen, der har lavet en ændring, og så sige, at vi gør det efter 90 dage. Det var præcis 90 dage. Så derfor er det vigtigt, at man adskiller de her ting. Storage, brugere, systemer, hypervisor, så det ligger separat, så man ligesom er der. Igen overveje en outsourcing omkring det, så man kan gå igennem og kigge på, hvad det er, og hvem der har adgang til ens backup-systemer. Det er super vigtigt. Backup. Jeg har stillet spørgsmålet, er det en brændende platform? Billedet illustrerer jo meget godt, at man sidder i sin IT-virksomhed, og man kører bare derudad, man kigger ikke på backuppen. Igen housekeeping, den er sat op for 4 år siden. Det spiller, jeg får en rapport hver dag. Du aner måske ikke, hvordan backuppen reelt set kører. Derfor er det så super vigtigt at komme tilbage til, at man dokumenterer sin backup, ved hvordan den kører, har et ansvarsområde, og også laver nogle risikoanalyser omkring, hvad sker der, hvis den her backup ikke fungerer. Igen, en af de kunder, vi arbejder med lige nu, har haft en server i 4 år, som ikke har været blevet backup af. Så de spørger, hvor er restoren henne? Hvordan kan vi restore det her? Der er ikke lavet backup på serveren. Men hvorfor er det ikke det? Den har aldrig været med i backuppen. Det er en brændende platform, det er blevet sat op. Der er ikke nogen, der ved, hvordan status er. Man får kun en rapport. Det er ikke så godt. Virkelig vigtigt, at man ligesom håndterer det der ting der. Og det er live scenarie eksempler, jeg giver nu, både fra min tid i Veeam og også her i Motus. Kryptering. Husk nøglen. Jamen selvfølgelig husker jeg da nøglen til bilen. Tesla, så er det mobiltelefonen i dag. Huset osv. Men hvad med nøglen til din backup? Har I krypteret jeres backup? Har I krypteret jeres backup-kopier? Har I krypteret fil-backup? Er det den samme nøgle, eller bruger I slet ikke en nøgle? Som I kan se her, så var der 30 af dem, vi spurgte. 30% som vi spurgte, som slet ikke havde krypteret deres backup. Det vil sige, hvis der er nogen inde og rode i jeres systemer, så kan de trække dataen ud, sende den til en eller anden V-transfer, Dropbox, whatever, og så kan de læse alt deres backup faktisk uden en nøgle. Så er det jo ret ligegyldigt, at I har en backup, fordi de læser det direkte alligevel. Derfor er det super vigtigt, at I laver en krypteringsnøgle, men husk lige på, hvor I gemmer den henne. Hvis der ligger en keypass på produktionen, og produktionen er nede, kan I så få backuppen frem? Det var et spørgsmål. Der er ikke nogen, der ved det. Det kan man nemlig ikke, nej, fordi nøglen lå det samme sted, som produktionen blev ramt. Derfor tænk over, dokumenter, hvor I har nøglerne henne, gem dem et sted, som ikke ligger samme sted som produktionsdata. Hvis jeg er ramt, så er nøglen væk. Data kan ikke blive genskabt. Lige en hurtig opsummering og en afslutning på de her ting. Tænk på restore-test, automatiseret restore-test, så I får en rapport, så I ved, om backuppen reelt set virker, når backup-platformen brænder, eller produktionen brænder. Tænk på en offsite og en offline-kopi, så I kan komme tilbage, hvis produktionsdata er væk. Herunder også adskilt backup for produktionen. Det er både hardware og menneskelig adgang til backup. Kryptering, som jeg nævnte som det sidste, det er super vigtigt. Og det hele kommer ned til housekeeping. Det er nødvendigt, selvom det er kedeligt. Men vær ansvarlig omkring jeres backup-platform. Det er super vigtigt. Og ikke sidst, men ikke mindst, det er jo et sikkerhedsseminar af Motus og Strato, så overvej en outsourcing til nogen, der ved, hvordan det kan være. Og stille de kritiske spørgsmål også. Det er også rigtig vigtigt. Er der nogen, der har nogle spørgsmål til mig? Både fra min tid som Veeam og som Motus, så er I velkommen til at stille dem nu, eller spørge mig bagefter. Og jeg håber ikke, at vi snakker sammen, fordi jeg, som Lars sagde, jeg bliver involveret, når det begynder at være kritisk. Det behøver ikke at være kritisk. Jeg snakker også med nogle af vores kunder, uden det er kritisk, men bare roligt. Ja. Det var så det for mig. Hvis der ikke er nogen spørgsmål, så vil jeg sige tak for i dag.
Ja. Må jeg spørge dig om noget? Kan du godt lide, når der bliver lavet ransomware-angreb på vores kunder? Altså, synes du, det er sjovt?
Om det er sjovt?
Ja, er det sjovt?
Det giver da en glæde, når man kan hjælpe kunderne. Det skal da ikke være nogen hemmelighed. Når man kan få kunderne op og køre igen, så føler man sig stolt og tilfreds med sit arbejde, og kunden bliver glad. Men når du alligevel nævner det, hvis man så er nede med et ransomware-angreb, så det vi ser oftest, det er, at kunden tror, at man kan komme op og køre igen på 24 timer. Produktionen er ramt, der er ikke noget, der virker, vi vil ikke sende fakturer ud, kunderne vil klager, medarbejderne klager. En af de kunder, der blev ramt lige da jeg startede faktisk, de var så ramt, de blev ramt af 148 lokationer på samme tid, fordi det var AD'et, der blev kompromitteret. Så det var ikke sådan ligesom i Mærsk, hvor det spredte sig. Det var på én gang, 148 lokationer nede på én gang. Alle skreg jo, vi skal op og køre igen, produktionen er vigtig. I situationen her var det heldigvis, at produktionen ikke var ramt, fordi det var adskilt miljø. Men hvad med alle medarbejderne? Det tog også lang tid at komme igen, og det skal også noget, I skal have med i jeres risikoanalyse. Hvor lang tid kan vi tåle at være nede? Hvor hurtigt kan vi komme igen? Og som Pernille, jeg tror, hun sagde, test. Og Arctic Wolf, test de her ting her. Test dem igennem. Lav nogle test cases, hvor I prøver at pille ting ud. Se, hvor hurtigt kan vi komme tilbage. Det er super vigtigt. Men glæden, det er at hjælpe de kunder, der så er ramt, og se, at det virker.
Den der. Så giver den der
ja,
til,
tak for det.
Til Jeppe. Tak. Og det er jo meget operationelt, og operationel IT-sikkerhed, det er jo det, som vi i Motus har valgt at beskæftige os med. Backup er en af vores kerneservices. Men nu kommer vi til at udvide det, og det gør vi i kraft af vores merger med Strato, som familien bag Motus har købt op. Og der er rigtig mange gode ting, vi tager med fra de bedste fra Motus og de bedste fra Strato, og blander det sammen med noget, som vi i dag har valgt at kalde for det nye Strato. Og en af de ting, vi tager med, det er Jeppe. Og Jeppe, han står der. Og Jeppe er CEO for Strato, og bliver også CEO fremadrettet. Så, og operationel sikkerhed, det er jo en af de ting, der driver
det, er jo det,
som vi skal gøre nu. Og vil du have den her?
Jamen det vil jeg gerne, fordi det gør det lidt lettere for mig. Jamen, hej og velkommen til, og tak fordi I alle sammen er kommet. Det er fedt. Og The New Strato, ja, det bliver det nye Strato. Nu får vi en meget, meget bedre og større og mere sikker platform at køre på. Strato kort, det er jo, ja, det gider jeg ikke engang. Nærværende, modig og troværdig. Vi er nærværende, modig og troværdig, og vi har ikke så lang tid, så jeg skal nok være med at kede jer med, hvad Strato er. Vi er en platformsleverandør, og nu får vi et rigtig, rigtig stærkt sikkerhedsben ind, og det er vi rigtig, rigtig glade for. Det jeg skal snakke om, det er det der tænder for lyset. Og man kan sige, at vores, og det, er jo, det gælder generelt, både for de kunder, der kommer fra Strato, og også dem fra Motus og de nye kunder, der måtte sidde her, at verden er et usikkert sted. Vi ved det, og vi har set de forskellige præsentationer, hvordan at der kontinuerligt og igen rent faktisk er en hel forretning bagved, at forsøge at få fat i folks data, og forsøge at få fat i folks penge. Så det er ikke bare en eller anden lille studieidiot i et eller andet universitet et eller andet sted, det er rent faktisk organiseret kriminalitet, der driver for pengenes skyld. Og de er lige så velfunderede, de er mindst lige så dygtige, nogle er sikkert også dygtige, de har AI, de har alt muligt mærkeligt. Så det kommer fra hele verden, og de angriber alle steder. Og så kan man jo sige, og det har vi jo også hørt, dagsordenen som regel ikke langsigtet, at ransomware-betalinger stiger overraskende nok. Ikke? Så budgetterne er også kommet under pres, fordi problemet er lidt, hvad er vigtigst? Skal vi kunne betale vores regninger, eller skal vi have høj sikkerhed? Så der er sådan hele tiden den der afvejning imellem. Det er et svært sted. Rock and a hard place. Og det som vi, os, råder os til, det er hele tiden at kigge på den der balancerede indsats. Hvor er det, vi er henne? For der sidder folk med ansvar for IT, både det forretningsmæssige ansvar, men også det kommercielle ansvar, og du skal hele tiden finde ud af, hvordan får jeg den mest perfekte løsning, eller ikke mest perfekte, men den mest optimale løsning for min virksomhed i det her marked. Og der kan man sige, det kan være meget svært at have ansvaret, fordi der er 17.000 forskellige sikkerhedsprodukter, og der er 17.000 forskellige services, og hvornår skal vi gøre det ene, hvornår skal vi gøre det andet, og hvad er godt nok. Og så kan man sige, vores take på det er jo hele tiden, vi skal finde en eller anden vej derhen, som passer til den samlede forretning, nemlig en balanceret indsats. Så man skal have så meget sikkerhed som muligt for kronen. Og det er det evige dilemma. Risk versus kost. Fordi du har så mange risiko, og enhver kan tale risikoerne og risici op. Der kan være, alle de værktøjer, man køber, de skal vedligeholdes. Vi skal sørge for at have planer, compliance, governance. Vi skal sørge for struktur, der skal segregeres rettigheder, der skal segregeres data. Alle de her ting, hvornår er nok. Og det er jo derfor, man hele tiden skal kigge på alle sine systemer og sige, er det her kernekritisk for, at min forretning rent faktisk virker i morgen? For det er klart, at hvis jeg har 200 terabyte data i alt, men det kun er 1 terabyte, der er kritisk for, at jeg kører videre i morgen, så behøver jeg ikke nødvendigvis at have den bygget det hele op omkring, at det er alle data, alle systemer, alle måder, vi arbejder på, der skal sikres på samme måde. Så det kræver også nogle personale, og det kan også være svært at vedligeholde, eller vedholde. Og så kan man sige, at i services, der har du, hvordan kan vi tilpasse organisationen, hvordan kan vi tilpasse de services, der skal ramme organisationen, hvornår er nok. Og så fælles for, det er, at man skal altid markere, finde ud af, hvor er det, at vi finder de der risk, urgent and important for vores forretningsoverlevelse. De skal prioriteres og omsættes i praksis, og det skal gå hurtigt. Og det kan rent faktisk kun gå for langsomt, fordi at vores kære modpart i det her, den organiserede kriminalitet, de arbejder ikke kun 37 timer om ugen. Så det ændrer sig dagligt, og man kan sige, hvor det bliver rigtig slemt, ikke? Det er jo det der med, når man ikke ved det, hvad der er. At man tror bare, det hele er okay, fordi man ikke har tændt for lyset. Og det vil sige, et eller andet sted, så handler det om, den ukendte risiko, du har derude, er du også nødt til at få dækket af. Og det vil sige, at du skal hele tiden være sikker på, hvordan får jeg identificeret den trussel, der er imod mig, og hvordan får jeg kvantificeret og prioriteret, og så komme i gang med at scope det og få løst problemet. Og det er jo en af de ting, som vi i fællesskab, Strato, men vi råder vores kunder til, det er jo helt klart, det er så kritisk at få sat noget SOC as a service, få sat noget analysearbejde på de der kernesystemer, som man har. Så ja, man kan ikke hyre sig ud af det, man er nødt til at købe sig services, man er nødt til at få nogle services, som kontinuerligt bliver ved med at følge med i, hvordan trusselsbilledet ændrer sig. Ja. Og igen, forskellige kunder, forskellige krav. Jeg har arbejdet med rigtig mange kunder i min tid, og man kan sige, at hvis man har en håndværkervirksomhed, så er det ret vigtigt, at man kan sende regninger, og man kan lave timeting sager. Men driver man et eller andet, som bliver kastet, underlagt de forskellige NIS 2 eller DORA-direktiver, så er det helt klart, at man skal have noget andet fokus på, hvordan gør man det her. Og det vil sige, at vores take, det er hele tiden at sige, jamen okay, hvad er det for en modenhed, og hvad er det for et framework, og hvad er der nogle interessenter derude, og er der krav til pentest, og er der en CISO-ansat. Og der kan man sige, hvis kunderne er i den laveste kvantificering, så typisk nej. Og så anbefaler vi, at man tager, en service fra Strato, det vil være sådan noget væg-til-væg outsourcing med vores fusion. Der bliver vi jo en platformsleverandør, der leverer væg til væg. Og så kan man sige, så propper vi MDR ind i en neddroslet, men alligevel, hvad kalder man sådan noget, en væsentlig bedre løsning, end hvis man havde gjort det selv, kan man sige. Ikke? Så har du mellem, og det er hvis du har nogle, et sikkerhedsframework, hvis du begynder at sige, okay, jeg har faktisk nogle ting, der er lidt kritiske, jeg er nødt til at sørge for, at jeg rent faktisk kan, stå på mål over for enten en aktionær eller en ejerleder eller noget i den retning, jamen altså så er det en segmenteret outsourcing, som vi typisk vil anbefale, og igen til IC-SOC, altså service er vigtig, eller en kerneting, som vi anbefaler, men som udgangspunkt, så vil det være delelementer, man lægger de steder, hvor kravene er sat op. Og det sidste, ja, jeg sagde det selv, NIS 2 eller DORA, et SOC-partnerskab på en eller anden måde, Arctic Wolf er et rigtig godt bud, og noget segmentering af outsourcing. Så det er forskellige kunder, forskellige sikkerhedskrav. Og så, hvis jeg skal runde det af på en eller anden måde, så kan man sige, vi er, som jeg sagde, en platformsleverandør. Vi er baseret på, vi har, en platform, IT Outsource, altså IT as a Service, YAS, Infrastruktur as a Service, der er baseret på Nutanix. Vi er MSP nu hos Arctic Wolf. Strato har været det, fordi vi har det også i vores datacenter, og nu har vi jo med Motus-fusionen, kan man sige, så får vi en endnu større platform også inden for Arctic Wolf. Vi laver Workspace and Endpoint Management i partnerskab med Microsoft. Det er baseret på Intune, det vil sige, det er patch management og overvågning på tværs. Så business continuity, hele det der backup restore, som der ligger implicit i en ordentlig backup housekeeping. Og så har vi en relevant liste af certificeringer, ISO 27001, 303402, og så kan man sige, så kommer vi også til at skulle lægge os under de fremtidige IS2/store revisioner. Og så er vi jo, solidt dansk ejet familieejerskab med vores kære, Cipra og ledelsen. Så vi kan bygge i bund og grund hele vejen rundt, om man har lyst til en delmængde, eller man har lyst til at få en fuld outsourcing, så er Strato et rigtig godt bud på en outsourcing-leverandør. Og vores strategiske partnerskaber ligger, og det giver sig selv. Vi har AvePoint, som er vigtig for os. Vi har Nutanix, som er vigtig for os. Altså, ja, nu er de alle sammen vigtige. Microsoft, selv sagt, også vigtig. Vi leverer både på Asia, men også en hel del på Endpoint Management. Den var igennem retest. Arctic Wolf giver sig selv. Og så leverer vi netværk, altså service, baseret på Fortinet. Og så har vi backup, Commvault og IBM. Og det er klart, at vælger man at sige, at man kun vil købe en delmængde, så er det en segmenteret outsourcing, men det kan sagtens lade sig gøre. Vi kan sælge alt, så at sige, på den måde. Segmenteret. Så, jeg tror... Spørgsmål. Er der nogen, der har nogle spørgsmål?
Selv alt.
Ja, ikke
det
det tænkte jeg nok.
Godt.
Det tænkte jeg nok.
Så det betyder bare, at når I nu hører fra mig og min kammersugar, så synes jeg bare, at vi kommer med nogle flere ting, vi kan lægge på hylderne, og det kan være godt for nogle af jer. Og så er vi jo glade for at være kommet tættere på sådan nogen som AvePoint og Arctic Wolf. Og Arctic Wolf er jo nu en integreret del af vores infrastruktur. Så det betyder, at den servicepaketering, vi kan lave, også meget mere følger nogle af de ting, som jeg vil lige tale om. Så det er selvfølgelig det. Jeg håber, I har haft en god dag, og I har taget noget med hjem. Nu lige med, så kommer der et kamera rundt og spørger, om I har taget noget med hjem, samtidig med, at I spiser. Jeg ved, der er nogen, der helst ikke vil spise samtidig med, så må I lige sekventere det, ikke? Så lige spise først, og så kamera bagefter, så tilbage til spisning, eller omvendt. Men spørg meget simpelt, hvad I synes det vigtigste er, I har taget med her i dag. Og det kan I jo lige nå at tænke lidt over inden. Og så kommer der altså en servering med frokost ud fra vores køkken. Det glæder vi meget til. Og der er en lille dessert til det. Så jeg håber egentlig bare, at I har haft en god dag. Og så vil jeg invitere jer alle sammen til at tale med alle talerne, som jeg har i dag. Og mingle med dem og stille alle de spørgsmål, I har på sinde. Tusind tak, fordi I kom.